The question is no longer, can I afford this? The question is, can our planet afford to produce this? Can our planet afford to produce this for at least the next 7 generations to come? Right now, our economic and business models imperil life on Earth, including our own. The linear take-make-waste model must stop. Obscured supply chains that businesses don't take responsibility for must stop. The loss of biodiversity, which imperils half of global GDP, must stop. We have come to the end of the road of unfettered growth, of business that simply takes and does not give back. The solutions we have to choose must be good for people, good for economies, and good for the planet.
It's about energy. It's about rethinking the operating system itself. We have a fantastic opportunity to open new perspectives and new horizons. Instead of remaining trapped in the frustrations of the present, with creativity and innovation, we really can rethink and redesign our future.
As a representative of a global corporation,
we would like to join our voices today to issue a warning and make a commitment.
Global commodity trade has already altered 1/3 of the world's land surface for agriculture. Production of commodities continues to trigger habitat loss, degradation, and fragmentation, driving species to extinction and destroying the livelihoods of communities who depend on ecosystems for their livelihoods.
We need to rethink the way we produce and consume our food, our clothes, our cosmetics. Continuing with business as usual is not an option if we want to solve our planetary crises and achieve shared prosperity.
If we accept that the living world's cyclical model works, can we change our way of thinking so that we too operate a circular economy? Let's start with the biological cycle. How can our waste build capital rather than reduce it? By rethinking and redesigning products and components, and the packaging they come in, we can create safe and compostable materials that help grow more stuff.
Indigenous and community-led businesses hold the key for a green and inclusive recovery.
We are beginning to see how we will encourage natural resources to be utilized instead of plastics and nylon that have taken over most of these things.
Gbogbo ènìyàn tó bá ní ìdí rẹ̀ la máa ń tà fún. Àwọn kan wà wọ́n máa ń fi ń ṣènáwó, àwọn tó fi ń ta ọjà, àwọn tó ń lò nínú ilé fúnra ara wọn, tó fi ń ṣoúnjẹ fúnra ara wọn. So gbogbo ẹni tó nífẹ̀ẹ́ sí náà la máa ń tà.
But the circular economy isn't about one manufacturer changing one product. It's about all the interconnecting companies that form our infrastructure and economy coming together.
The reason for working with the Dutch Yarn Custodians was we saw a very unique opportunity and something that the industry has never seen in regards to sandalwood in Australia before, is that business relationship, the wild resource out in the bush, where the Indigenous cultures have really respected this tree for many thousands of years, and then being married up with the plantation industry, which has now got a renewable resource and is investment driven. So it's a perfect fit.
Progress for our planet means putting communities at the heart of sustainable supply chains. We should never forget that nature is our most abundant economy. Creating a truly green economy means creating an economy that can weather all storms and can regenerate our future.
Welcome back to the Nature for Life Hub. I am Eva Gurria, the host of today's Nature for Life Obsessions. In this section, we'll explore what it means to shift to a nature-positive economy. We know that virtually all of our economy, from the way we produce, transport, consume, and dispose of food, clothing, and other goods, to the way we produce and consume minerals and gas and oil and timber, is not aligned with nature. So in this first segment, we'll look at how building an economy based on nature, so a new bioeconomy, can help people and nature thrive together. We'll hear from a variety of groups building a nature-based bioeconomy, from Ecuador to Europe, and from communities leading the way. Let's hear what they have to say.
What exactly does bioeconomy mean? The University of Hohenheim explains it to you. Right now, our life would not function without oil. It's in our clothes, our homes, and our packaging. We need it to grow crops, process them into food, and transport this food to stores. We use it for driving, for heating, and for the production of electricity. However, this is bad for the climate. Besides that, oil and other fossil fuels will run out in the near future. What will we do then? And how should we respond to the changes in our environment, like climate change, for example? The University of Hohenheim is looking to the future with bioeconomy. This research area is concerned with the economy of tomorrow, in which bio-based goods will play a major role in shaping our lifestyles. We rely on plants, animals, microorganisms, and even organic waste as sustainable resources. We want to produce and use these resources with increasing efficiency. For example, we are breeding new plants that grow in nutrition-poor soils and require little water. We are developing novel products, such as plastics from biomass or proteins from hemp or grass. In doing so, we conduct research without losing sight of sustainability. We want to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The goal is to have a circular economy, in which we use resources sparingly. This will mean we can secure food for the growing world population and preserve nature with its biodiversity. The bioeconomy combines business with sustainability. That is why we are working on making biomass industrially usable as a basis for high-quality products. For this to catch on, entirely new business models are needed. After all, only products that consumers can accept and pay for will become established. Our society therefore needs people who understand the biological and technical basics, as well as experts who have an eye on the economic context. These are the people we educate. You can find all degree programs on our website. For the bioeconomy and sustainability experts of tomorrow. Find out more at bioeconomy.uni-hohenheim.de/en.
Hello everyone, my name is Patricia Serrano and I am the manager of the Amazonian Integral Forest Conservation and Sustainable Production Program, Pro-Amazonia, and I am glad to talk to you about the implementation of sustainable and deforestation-free production in the Ecuadorian Amazon. From the Amazon, Ecuador drives the production that the planet strives for. Forest conservation implies significant changes in the management of natural resources, production, and policies regarding the use of land. For a mega-diverse country like Ecuador, where 50% of the continental territory is covered by native forests while being inhabited by 14 indigenous nationalities that depend on them to survive, achieving these transformations stand as a strategic commitment for sustainable development. One of the main drivers is the expansion of the agricultural frontier, a change in the use of land that represents the second highest greenhouse gas emissions nationwide. According to the Ministry of the Environment, Water, and ecological transition, in Ecuador, 99% of the deforested area was dedicated to the use of agricultural land use, aquiculture, and forestry plantations. One of the key strategies that combines mitigation and adaptation is reducing deforestation and degradation of the forests, REDD+, and the implementation of sustainable production systems. Ecuador pioneers the implementation of positive policies and implementation. In 2017, aiming at supporting the implementation of the REDD+ Action Plan, Forests for Good Living 2016-2025, the Amazonian Integral Forest Conservation and Sustainable Production Program, ProAmazonia, was established. This is a program led by the Ministry of Environment, Water and Ecological Transition and the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock, with UNDP's support and the financing of the Green Climate Fund and the Global Environmental Facility. The objective is to promote forest conservation and sustainable deforestation-free production in the Ecuadorian Amazonian region, while strengthening the governance and implementation of public policies and planning, financial and economic instruments that encourage sustainable management of natural resources. This is aimed at reducing the deforestation and degradation of forests in Ecuador. How can we ensure that production is truly sustainable? The transition towards sustainable production systems implies an integral vision that articulates several actions in the production chain. For example, improving productivity, technification, traceability, certification, access to markets, incentives, and responsible consumers, as well as transversal access such as gender perspective and interculturality. In this way, an integral sustainable development where an economic growth is generated can be promoted, contributing to the eradication of poverty and food safety without disregarding the protection and restoration of the environment. The promotion of actions in the Ecuadorian Amazon is crucial considering the importance of conservation and its productive potential, which is aligned with the REDD+ approach. The initiatives with an integral value chain approach entail the strengthening of both technical assistance and constant training, as these are key elements to fortify the Amazonian productive sector without threatening the environmental care. With this in mind, a three-axis approach has been conformed: a primary production, collection, processing, and commercializing, which are focused on four prioritized commodities: coffee, cocoa, palm oil, and livestock. With respect to the primary production axis, together with the strategic partners such as the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, the Tropical Agricultural Research and Higher Education Center, and the National Association of Palm Oil Growers, field schools are implemented to strengthen the capacities of the producers in sustainable and deforestation-free practices. 9,200 associated producers, 44% of them are women, and 89,900 influenced hectares. Currently, training processes are taking place in the coffee and cacao crops with the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture and the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock, linking 3,000 producers allocated along the 6 Amazonian provinces. In the case of livestock, ProAmazonia works with the CATIE and the MAG with over 4,800 producers. Technical assistance and permanent training are key elements for the strengthening of the capacities of Amazonian farmers in terms of handling of productive systems with nature-friendly technologies. These practices allow the producers to be more efficient in a smaller area, increasing their income and generating social, economic, and environmental sustainability. Regarding the collection and processing axis, work is being developed in the creation of platforms and action plans for the 3 productive chains. Repowering of 13 coffee and cacao collection centers in collaboration with the European Committee for Agricultural Training. The repowering of the collection centers contributes to fortifying the processing capacity and quality of coffee and cocoa, improving its possibility of insertion in international differentiated markets. At the international level, more rigorous regulations have been established for the production and distribution of agricultural products. Through an extended control on the supply chain, to demonstrate a deforestation-free production of commodities that prevents climate change and respects people's rights. Group Amazonia are working on the sustainable and deforestation-free production certification, which will ensure that the product comes from productive systems that implement sustainable and deforestation-free practices. It is precisely during commercializing that the efforts of the producers regarding sustainable and deforestation-free productions are evidenced through the negotiation of stable purchase and sale agreements at differentiated prices. Having sold a first 3.8-ton lot of fine organic aroma cocoa to Belgium in 2021, coming from a sustainable production, Ecuador achieved a key milestone in its compromise and initiative for the implementation of actions to reduce deforestation through the REDD+ approach. There were 18 cocoa producer families that, thanks to this sale, ensured a new market niche with a high growth potential in the short term while improving their income. Moreover, this is the case of 400 producers of the Ecuadorian Amazon and their families who in July 2022 were able to export to Italy 17.2 tons of organic certification specialty coffee. Ecuador seeks to offer the sustainable production that the planet is urgently striving for, traditional practices of the local Ecuadorian Amazonian communities, while also contributing to the conservation of natural resources.
Guáimaro es un árbol rico en proteínas. Nuestros abuelos solamente lo cocinaban y se lo tomaban con café por la mañana. Y ya con eso pasaban todo el día.
En esa época eran famosos los carros madereros. No había un control ambiental. Y después viene la bonanza marimbera que acabó con los guáimaros de las cuencas de los ríos de la Sierra de Perijá. Prácticamente lo tenemos en estas cuencas que son inaccesibles para los vehículos. Por lo menos los indígenas lo consumían mucho. Entonces en épocas de cosecha de guáimaros se vienen de allá de los caseríos hacia las cuencas del río donde hay más guáimaros a recoger guáimaros y a comer.
Yo antes, en un día normal, pues me levantaba, iba al colegio y ya del resto de tiempo solo me quedaba para dormir y ya no hacía nada. Ya ahora estoy más activo, ya que si viene un proyecto me meto pues para tener más conocimiento de qué se trata y aprender. Me gusta pintar también, me gusta así dibujar la naturaleza, dibujar animales, dibujar, eso es como alegría para mí. El guáimaro lo conocí mediante la Fundación Envolver. Propuso unos 4 viveros, ahí plantearon lo del guáimaro, ahí fui conociendo mucho más. Es un proyecto que lleva a cabo a conservar el bosque seco tropical, a cuidar el medio ambiente. El guáimaro es importante porque conserva el bosque, mantiene mucho la humedad, salen corrientes de agua, le da mucho alimento a los animales del bosque.
Todo animal come guáimaro cuando hay cosecha de guáimaro en el bosque. Viene en una cápsula parecida del color a la mandarina, es la que comen las aves. Y al caer al suelo ya queda la almendra. Es un productazo porque tiene mucha cantidad de proteínas, es muy rico en potasio, en fósforo, mejor dicho, es un medicamento. Y también se consume así fresco, en guiso, sopa, se hacen por lo menos bebidas como la avena.
El proceso del guáimaro, bueno, empieza con la recolección, después viene el lavado, después lo ponen a secar durante unos días, después lo llevan al sitio de transformación, lo tuestan, lo muelen, lo empacan y lo mandan para botar. Yo creo que se puede vivir del guáimaro porque sirve como bastimento, hacen bollos, hacen dulces, hacen empanadas, hacen arepas, hacen tortas.
La idea es que el campesino de acá de la región siembre más. Hay cultivos que pueden existir debajo de los bosques de guáimaro, como el cacao. Eso es lo que se está buscando, un sistema agroforestal y que el campesino tenga otro ingreso, porque si usted tiene algo que le produce, usted lo conserva. Hay que luchar para que haya un cambio generacional de mentalidad.
El guáymaro es un árbol que viene de generación en generación, pero que se ha perdido con el tiempo porque nosotros los jóvenes no hemos sabido aprovechar eso. Y lo que quiero es dar a conocer o visualizar el guáymaro, que no se pierda y conservarlo.
Más abajo en Los Venados, corregimiento de Valledupar, hay un pueblo muy bonito que yo conozco, llama Guaymaral. Más abajo en Los Venados, corregimiento de Valledupar, hay un pueblo muy bonito que yo conozco, llama Guaymaral. Pero no porque se llama que hayan frutos por allí, solo traigo este recuerdo porque si lo hay en mi becerril. Pero no porque se llama que hayan frutos por allí, solo traigo este recuerdo porque si lo hay en mi becerril.
As Commissioner for Innovation, Research, Culture, Education and Youth, I'm proud to present the European Bioeconomy Strategy. This strategy will help us to deploy a true and sustainable bioeconomy that works in tandem with nature to provide for our needs while also protecting our environment for generations to come. The bioeconomy is already nourishing us by providing the food we eat, clean water, energy, housing and other materials. Through the sustainable use of renewable resources, it has the potential to help us face our global challenges. Through advances in science, technology, and innovation, we can fully unlock the potential of Europe's bioeconomy. This will be essential in delivering on our Green Deal objectives toward becoming the first climate-neutral continent by 2050. It's time to look ahead and make the green transition happen.
The bioeconomy strategy aims at ensuring food security, moving from a fossil-based economy to a bioeconomy, and unlocking the potential of seas and oceans through better use of our resources and smart use of those we don't use yet in sectors which have not been exploited, such as agriculture, marine, etc. To move towards these objectives, an action plan was drawn up and recently adjusted to the new environmental, economic, and societal challenges Europe is facing. So, what are the main priorities of the new action plan, and how can they be achieved? For a start, bio-based sectors will be boosted. This will be done, for example, by unlocking investments and markets, deploying innovative bio-based solutions, and developing substitutes to plastics that are bio-based, recyclable, and marine biodegradable. Secondly, the deployment of local bioeconomies will be encouraged across Europe, for example, through the transition to sustainable food and farming systems, sustainable forestry, and more diversified revenues for farmers and fishermen. And last but not least, a better understanding of the ecological boundaries will enhance the knowledge base on biodiversity and ecosystems and benefits of biodiversity in primary production. With these three priorities, Europe is setting its course for a more innovative and sustainable bioeconomy, where natural resources boost growth and jobs where people live.
Nosotros como que nos despertamos donde estábamos y nos dimos cuenta que tenemos una riqueza tan grande que es la materia prima, que es la tierra, y lo que usted pone en ella, ella te produce.
La producción tradicional cultural está basada en las 5 categorías: el teitó, el huitó, el chomogró, sadri y sacha. ¿Eso qué quiere decir? Que eso es una forma de producir la tierra, pero de una manera cultural, que ahí voy a trabajar de la mano con el ambiente, no voy a dañar los ríos ni las quebradas, ni tampoco los animales, sino que voy a trabajar de manera sabia y poder rotar la tierra.
Que vea qué importante y lindo, porque son cosas que no tenemos que comprar, sino que sembramos y la tierra nos da y podemos compartir. No solo es para, digamos, para consumo de nosotros nada más, sino también pensando en las demás personas y que podemos ayudar.
Las familias se dedican a comercializar plátano y a la hora de llega la pandemia se limita las entradas de los camiones y eso al territorio. Entonces, buscar una manera estratégica como para apoyar a las familias y que puedan obtener sus productos y no carezcan de hambre.
Nos ha impulsado lo del trueque virtual, porque muchas veces nosotros no tenemos esto, no tenemos aquello, entonces las otras familias quizás sí lo tienen.
Yo consigo semillas, ellos tienen semillas y podemos intercambiar con otros lugares, digamos, con otros pueblos.
Nosotras somos las que transmitimos el conocimiento, somos las que defendemos nuestra tierra, y con esto nace la idea de crear la Asociación de Mujeres.
Trabajamos con 10 comunidades del territorio, estamos trabajando con las mujeres, las familias, derechos de las mujeres, en capacitación de liderazgo de las mujeres, trabajar también con la juventud, de rescate cultural.
Volvimos a nuestras raíces, volvimos a saber y a aprender y a practicar el uso de la tierra.
Nuestros mayores nos enseñaron y también las enseñanzas que nos dieron nuestros papás, tenemos que pasárselas a ellos. Entonces es como pasar una antorcha.
Hemos llegado al punto donde estamos viendo la importancia y el poder que tenemos nosotros sobre nuestras familias. Realmente todo esto nos ha ayudado a salir adelante. Es ponernos a trabajar nosotros mismos, porque nosotros podemos, de que podemos, y hemos hecho grandes cosas.
Yo sé que no solo yo, todas las compañeras han estado muy emocionadas con este proyecto, todas.
Animo a muchas otras mujeres en sus pueblos donde estén. Esta es una manera tan linda donde nosotros podamos ayudar a tantas mujeres a salir adelante, porque cada día sufrimos violencia en diferentes áreas y no nos damos cuenta. Entonces, este es un mensaje que les dejo para que ojalá puedan replicar esto en otros territorios, en otros países. Y un abrazo a la distancia.
Bioeconomy stands for renewable resources, a new approach, new solutions, and for a better future. It means that our generation and the generations who don't have a voice yet are able to live in a world for everyone, in a circular economy where everybody has the same rights and the same circumstances to live.
For me, bioeconomy is not only a matter of environment, but it's also a matter of people. Bioeconomy should take into account not only the present generation, but also the future ones.
What I really like about bioeconomy is that it brings those people who are often neglected along and includes everybody in the transition that we need to make.
Every policy choice that is made right now by policymakers that are considerably older than us will affect us directly. So it's very important for us to also already now stand up and add our voice, add our ideas, so we can make sure these policies are also made for us.
It's our future they're all talking about and making decisions about. I feel like we should have a powerful voice to speak to them and to discuss with them about the future.
So it is important for you to take on an active role now more than ever, especially when it comes to bioeconomy, because bioeconomy is the future of our economy, our society, and our health and well-being.
The voice of youth really needs to be amplified and taken seriously.
I encourage youth to attend the conference and give their opinions to not just the policymakers, but also the CEOs and the NGOs that will be present there.
The world is really facing many different challenges, maybe most importantly, the climate crisis, which we are now in the midst of.
We would like to live longer than 50 years and have a future for our children as well.
I would like to reach a lot of young talents to show them the advantages and the possibilities about the bioeconomy.
I hope that within our activities we could help young people to raise their voice and to realize that they can make a change.
We need creative ideas and creative matters to spread the word of bioeconomy. And I think youth as the key to that.
I'm really looking forward to what we can achieve as a group in the future.
We need to take action, and the best people who can do is us, young generations.
I have the feeling we can really achieve a lot if we work in this network together.
Youth should be present and be represented in the Bioeconomy Congress next October here in Brussels, because they own the future of the planet.
Le cacao, c'est quelque chose qui est trop important pour nous. On le travaille parce pour mieux garder la famille et pour mieux sauvegarder encore la famille de dehors.
The government of Cameroon has the ambition to increase its cocoa production, which is on average 300,000 tons per year, to 600,000 tons by 2030.
The demand for oil palm has grown, and so many governments, particularly in Africa, including Cameroon, are seeing the oil palm production as a sector where they can grow the GDP of the country, but also to alleviate poverty.
And given this very ambitious project, we can see that there's going to be a lot of pressure that is going to be put on existing forests.
I render all I have for His goodness toward me. I render.
Farmers are trapped in a cycle where they have to borrow money in anticipation for some revenue that's based on a price that's not set by them. That price for cocoa is set by the international market. And then you have a lot of people within the supply chain. You have the chocolate producers, and then you have the large merchants or trading companies that buy from different countries and then supply to the industries. And then down the supply chain, you also have all the middlemen, the cooperatives that interact directly with the farmers. And at the end of the day, less than 10% of the revenue of that trade actually goes down to the farmer. Sometimes it's like 5% or 6%.
Farmers, they are facing the realities. They have to go to them, you have to explain to them, they have to understand the basics of those rules. And there should not be rules that are just drafted at the international level, and signed at the international level without their own participation and also without explaining it to them.
Presque pas. Et ici, la durabilité vient même avec des contraintes supplémentaires qui vont augmenter les coûts. Et si le prix reste le même, ça ne peut pas aller. Ça ne peut pas aller.
Certification alone is not the silver bullet that will provide solutions to the sustainability issues within cocoa and the palm oil sectors. But then it's just one of the mechanisms that can be used to make these sectors more sustainable. It has to be part of a hybrid strategy that involves government policies, government regulations, and also a strategy that involves smallholders who are at the center of the production of these commodities, so that they would get their voices heard, get all the issues that they are facing during the production process, because they are the ones contributing towards deforestation. They are the ones facing all the socioeconomic issues. So if they are put at the center and get them involved in the decision-making process, I think it will be a more lasting way to get trade within the sectors more sustainable.
Nós somos a FAZ, Fundação Amazônia Sustentável, uma organização da sociedade civil que tem como objetivo contribuir para a conservação ambiental da Amazônia através da valorização da floresta em pé e sua biodiversidade. E para perpetuar a Amazônia Viva com todos e para todos, nós desenvolvemos programas e projetos em mais de 600 comunidades tradicionais, beneficiando mais de 41 mil pessoas na região. Mas a nossa história vai além de números. Ela se trata de impactar positivamente a vida de populações indígenas e tradicionais da Amazônia.
Debaixo da copa das árvores, a força feminina das mulheres indígenas é pulsante como a floresta amazônica.
A floresta representa como se fosse uma mãe para a gente. Ela oferece tudo que a gente precisa, a floresta oferece. Da alimentação, a boa saúde, a tudo. Meu nome é Neurilene Cruz, né? Sou da etnia Cambeba, do povo que veio lá do Alto Solimões. Aqui no restaurante, a gente não só serve a comida regional, mas como principal o tradicional que é do nosso povo, que é o fane, a pupeca, a mujica. Os ingredientes que a gente usa no restaurante, a maioria das coisas são daqui. Pega macaxeira, o cubi, os peixes também são daqui. Quando eu tô levando um prato, eu não tô levando só uma comida, eu tô levando o nosso amor, o nosso carinho, a nossa cultura principalmente, né? E a nossa dedicação e a confiança que as pessoas têm na gente.
Para fortalecer ainda mais a identidade cultural das mulheres indígenas, a FAZ tem atuado para valorizar o trabalho das empreendedoras da região, com a inserção e permanência de seus produtos no mercado local.
Esse aqui é o espaço que eu considero meu, talvez, refúgio, que enquanto ser humano, enquanto pessoa, enquanto mulher, eu busco interagir com ele de corpo e alma. Então é desse espaço que eu consigo extrair as essências de tudo aquilo que eu busco encontrar para transformar ou ajudar a transformar vidas. Eu poderia muito bem olhar para isso tudo e dizer assim, bom, eu tenho uma floresta inteira para eu ganhar, mas ganhar o que exatamente que eu quero? Eu também posso falar que a minha maior inspiração é a própria mulher. Sabe? Eu olho para as outras mulheres e sempre penso assim, nossa, e quando eu vejo uma mulher fazendo tanta coisa, eu digo, eu gostaria de ser como ela, porque eu acho que nós mulheres, nós temos que nos inspirar muito uma nas outras, nas essências que nós temos dentro de nós, porque nós temos muitas capacidades. Às vezes nós temos medo de desenvolvê-las, né, de mostrá-las, até por conta da nossa própria talvez timidez de dizer, de falar, mas a inspiração maior que eu tive e vou continuar tendo somos nós mulheres, minha mãe, minha avó, minha prima, a minha amiga, as pessoas que estão ao meu redor. E a outra é a própria natureza, que me dá tudo o que eu preciso.
Quando você nasce numa comunidade tradicional como eu nasci, a minha lembrança é do pé no chão, de viver num ambiente totalmente livre, cheio de riqueza, mas ao mesmo tempo com muita ausência de política pública. Então eu cresci com o intuito de um dia poder dar continuidade na minha história para outras pessoas de uma forma diferente, contribuir para o desenvolvimento das comunidades. Então, essa lembrança de uma infância num ambiente livre, cheio de oportunidades, cheio de liberdade, é o que me fortalece e faz com que hoje eu possa trabalhar para as comunidades e poder, então, contribuir, ser útil como ser humano e dar continuidade na história das populações tradicionais e fazer com que cada trabalho que a gente desenvolve nas comunidades, cada projeto que a gente implementa na comunidade é um sonho realizado, é uma conquista de uma história que nasceu lá atrás, quando eu nasci numa comunidade tradicional quilombola. E hoje trabalhar para as populações tradicionais, sejam elas ribeirinhas ou indígenas, é, de fato, dar continuidade na minha própria história, na minha própria existência. É o pisar no chão, mas olhar para frente sabendo que as populações tradicionais merecem um tratamento diferenciado, porque, afinal de contas, elas têm a responsabilidade de cuidar dessa floresta que alimenta, que inspira tantas pessoas.
Hello, everyone. Many thanks for this invitation. I'm Ricardo Abramovay, professor at the University of São Paulo. Gustavo Petro's victory in Colombia and Lula's victory in Brazil paved the way for a new global geopolitics of climate and biodiversity. At COP27, Lula's transition team will share a proposal for the creation of a BIC bloc, a big bloc. Not the BRICS, but BIC, standing for cooperation between Brazil, Indonesia, and Congo. These three countries are home to vast and diverse rainforests, and this proposal summarizes an ambition for societies and governments to become responsible for the world's tropical forests and commit to zero deforestation. However, it would be a mistake to treat tropical forests as untouchable domes. The Amazon basin, for example, is inhabited by 40 million people, all the Pan-Amazonian region. 2/3 of this population resides in cities, many of which make up metropolitan regions. Belém and Manaus, for instance, are metropolitan areas in Brazil with more than 5 million inhabitants. At the same time, the Amazon is also home to people living inside the forest, including indigenous extractive riverine communities that have been systematically attacked by criminal activities linked to illegal logging, clandestine gold mining, and the invasion of protected areas for speculative purposes. The new democratic governments have a responsibility to fight multinational criminal network activities that are now established in the region. It is also critical that economic activities that improve the living condition of Amazonian populations while valuing its rich biodiversity, that these activities emerge. The chapter on the bioeconomy of the Science Panel for the Amazon provides an overview of the state of challenges and opportunities for a bioeconomy of tropical forest in the Amazon, as well as a set of proposals that become even more relevant now with the democratic reconstruction that begins in Brazil. The chapter begins by calling attention to the almost complete absence of an economy of tropical forests, social biodiversity in the scientific and technological frontier of a contemporary bioeconomy. It is critical to strengthen existing scientific organization in the Amazon, establish joint work plans, and expand cooperation with top scientific and technology production centers around the world. Tropical forests offer opportunities to diversify contemporary diets strongly characterized by the monotony and the risks posed by large monocultures. Scientific and technological organizations in the Amazon are also essential for the region to fulfill its vocation to provide pharmaceutical and cosmetic products, as well as important materials for innovation. The Brazilian Amazon presents the worst social indicators in the country. 15% of Brazilian population is facing hunger as a result of the destruction of food policies and organizations by the extreme right since 2019. This rate is even higher in the Amazon, reaching 26%. At the same time, the Amazon's food supply is highly dependent on products coming from other Brazilian regions. The social biodiversity of the Amazon should play a decisive role in fighting against hunger and in the valorization of a regional gastronomy and culinary identity. An alliance between Brazil, Colombia, and other Latin American countries in defense of the forest would increase the attractiveness of capital for forest regeneration. The overwhelming majority of the areas that have been destroyed so far have been abandoned or contain very low productivity livestock. 1/3 of the area currently occupied for meat production would be enough to deliver the same quantity. In addition to the positive climate effects, forest regeneration creates quality jobs and help to disseminate knowledge and technology throughout the region. There are two other fundamental dimensions in which a social biodiversity economy can contribute to changing economic growth patterns and thus contribute to the sustainable development of the Amazon. It is critical to stimulate nature-based solutions to handle the main infrastructure problems in Amazonian cities, including civil construction standards, urban paving and equipment to support river transport system between municipalities, and collaborative watershed management and social mobilization against hydroelectric projects that, if carried out, would devastate river system in the Amazon are decisive elements of this nature-based solution that include decentralization and the expansion of solar, wind, green hydrogen, and biomass energy generation. A strong social biodiversity forests economy will only emerge if the appropriate infrastructure is implemented. So far, infrastructure planned and implemented in the Amazon has been focused primarily in the commercialization of agricultural and mineral commodities. Currently, infrastructure often contributes little to life quality improvement while being responsible for major social and environment destructive impacts. Tropical forests, governments, and society need to invest in infrastructure that promotes the sustainable development of these regions, which provide the ecosystem services on which life on the planet depends.
As pessoas também olhavam a gente como um grande desmatador assim da floresta, mas na verdade a gente só sobrevivia, né? Trabalhava com extração de madeira e legal na mata. Então todo dia eu ia para o mato com o destino de derrubar a árvore. E fiz isso durante 30 anos da minha vida. Faz. É Fundação Amazônia Sustentável. Essa palavra sustentável que entrou na minha cabeça que antes eu não sabia. Para mim, sustentabilidade era, sei lá, no meu tempo, tirar madeira, eu estava sendo sustentabilidade para mim. Mas aí, com a chegada da fundação, não. A fundação fez com que as coisas acontecessem. Trouxe vários projetos, saúde, educação, e trouxe conhecimento para dentro da comunidade. E passei a ter a oportunidade de fazer outra atividade, não ser tirar madeira. Aproveitar a floresta de outra forma. E trabalhar no turismo básico comunitário, para mim, foi assim, uma oportunidade que mudou a minha vida. Não só a minha, mas da minha família toda.
Tenho uma família muito grande, né? Tenho 80 sobrinhos. Meu pai faleceu e ficou só a minha mãe, que já está idosa. E eu tenho a responsabilidade de ser o esteio da família agora. E a FAS trouxe o curso aqui de uma oportunidade de trabalho. Curso de produção sustentável, unidade de conservação. Curso voltado para a nossa realidade. Fazer que surgissem novos empreendedores dentro da comunidade. Hoje, eu trabalho no projeto de pesquisa experimental, trabalhar com óleos vegetais e produção de açaí, e vendemos a grandes empresas de cosméticos. A chegada da FAS, né, realmente mudou a comunidade, mudou muito o modo de valorizar o local, porque eu posso produzir, vender, mas viver em cooperação com a natureza. Tipo, eu vou tirar tanto, mas eu tenho que deixar tanto para gerações futuras. E isso, nossa, não tem nada melhor do que você saber que eu vou tirar aqui, mas meu filho, meu neto, meu bisneto vai saber que eu trabalhei com isso e ele vai poder trabalhar também.
Antes de ser uma vida de atleta, eu já tirava com um arco nativo. Sempre o arco e flecha foi dos indígenas. Pescava com meus amigos quando ia 7, 8 pessoas. Eu fui aprendendo a pegar as técnicas com eles, a olhar o que eles faziam e o que não faziam. Comecei a pescar sozinho, ia na minha canoa, pegava o almoço, 10, 15 peixes. E foi quando apareceu a FAS. Além de um grande desenvolvimento na nossa aldeia, educação, saúde e outro projeto, trouxe a oportunidade de nos tornarmos atletas de arco e flechas. Antigamente eu não pensava no futuro que eu ia fazer ainda. Hoje eu vejo novas oportunidades, novos caminhos para preservar a nossa cultura indígena.
Viver sustentabilidade é um desafio para todo mundo. Em qualquer lugar você pode viver sustentável, mas é um desafio. Hoje eu vejo assim, a preservação em si, só da água e floresta, não acontece. Acontece se tiver a preservação também das pessoas que moram aqui dentro. Preservando as pessoas, dando qualidade de vida boa aqui dentro, não tem órgão nenhum que quer mais preservado isso do que nós que moramos aqui.
One year ago, myself, alongside Achim Steiner, the administrator for the UN Development Program, and Franz Timmermans, Vice President of the European Commission, published an op-ed clearly calling for moving towards a net positive economy, and in particular taking into consideration the role of nature. Nature is at the core in which we can solve the climate crisis. And yet here, as I am in Sharm el-Sheikh, and as we discuss the transition plan towards the CBD COP, we realize that we're actually even backtracking in terms of our climate negotiations, that we are rethinking 1.5 degrees Celsius as our anchor, that we are not actually moving forward in terms of addressing the needs of the world's most vulnerable. addressing the 100 billion commitment or the loss and damage commitments that we need to make. At the end of the day, as we have seen through the Club of Rome's work with so many economists and scientists over the last 2 years through our publication, Earth for All, A Survival Guide for Humanity, we know that nature has to be at the heart of our 5 key turnarounds. Elimination of poverty, elimination of inequality, ensuring the empowerment and diversity of more voices and actors, of women in particular, and youth and cultures, alongside a total transformation of our energy and our food systems. The conversations that are happening here at the highest levels have not moved to the degree of urgency that they absolutely need to be. They have not taken into account the needs of the financial transfer, as well as clearly the commitments from governments to embed nature into their accounting, into their NDCs, and into the way in which they address the reduction of carbon in our atmosphere. Our systems compass, which initially actually was looking and addressing the European Green Deal, trying to see if this incredible vision, this ambitious way of moving forward to ensure the decarbonization of the European region in sync with ensuring a more social Europe, demonstrates that we need to put in place key value-based principles in order to move forward, redefine our governance, redefine our extractive model, which depletes our natural resources and creates such a strain on our economies because they actually do not service people, planet, and prosperity at the same time. Address competitiveness, address the way in which we lead our governments and our businesses. These principles have now been adapted from an international lens. Our international compass is trying to address the importance of the impact that a region like Europe will have as it continues to move towards its European Green Deal. What does that mean in terms of our trade partners? What does that mean in terms of material flows? How can we act in true partnership to ensure that we have a green and social deal at a global level rather than just at a regional level? My message today is actually that in 1 year of calling for a nature-positive economy with Achim Steiner, with Frans Timmermans, we have not acted fast enough nor gotten to the place that we need to be. I very much hope that as we transition into the CBD COP, we recognize the feedback loops that need to be created in terms of the policy aims, that we optimize the different actors that are part of ensuring that we can match those aims, that we bring in the importance of our caretakers, the indigenous people, the youth, the women, and that we ensure that we put in place the right capital flows to protect our natural resources while we decarbonize. And I would like to show my appreciation for the way in which the Nature for Life Hub has brought us together to think through some of these dilemmas so that we can truly make this a decade of action.
We heard in this last segment how we can put nature at the foundation of our economies. But nature doesn't always mean green. Sometimes it means blue. In this next segment, we will explore what the blue economy, an economy based on oceans and marine life, means to communities around the world, from Indonesia to Cabo Verde. Let's listen in.
My name is Donna Bertorelli. I am an ocean conservation advocate, and I'm honored to have been chosen by UNCTAD, the United Nations Trade and Development Body, as special advisor for the blue economy. Our ocean is under threat. This affects all of humanity. We depend on the blue economy for everything: livelihoods, transport, recreation, tourism, and even the very air we breathe. 3 billion people worldwide rely on the ocean for jobs, food, health, and security. Now is the time to do things differently for the ocean. As a sailor, I've spent countless hours sailing the ocean's waters, eventually becoming the fastest woman to sail around the globe. Spending so much time at sea made me realize that I wanted to dedicate my life to protecting nature and safeguarding our life support system, the ocean, for generations to come. Our lives depend on a healthy ocean. So join me and UNCTAD to promote a sustainable blue economy and help humans live in harmony with our beautiful ocean.
Laut untuk Raja Ampat adalah kehidupan.
Laut memberi kita hidup. Laut memberi kita makan. Laut menghibur kita. Laut menopang perekonomian kita.
Sebelum adanya pos penjagaan ini, wilayah kami sangat rawan dengan masalah pemboman.
Tahun 90-an itu ada, ini laut ini hancur.
Ekonomi laut yang berkelanjutan bukan jargon semata.
Laut adalah masa depan kita. 73% dari para wilayah NKRI adalah laut.
Karena ikan dan tangkapan lainnya adalah sumber penghidupan kita. Karena laut yang bersih dari sampah menopang sumber pangan dan mata pencaharian kita. Mari kelola laut secara berkelanjutan untuk kesejahteraan Indonesia. Karena laut membuat kita sejahtera bersama.
Perkembangan tentang pariwisata ini juga sudah masuk sampai ke Raja Ampat. Sebab kalau sudah rusak berarti ya orang tidak datang lagi. Maka di situ kalau tidak rusak orang makin datang banyak. Maka di situ kita sudah bisa dapat uang dari situ.
Di sini saya duduk di sini saya berbicara khusus untuk masyarakat lokal Kabupaten Raja Ampat dan terutama untuk pemerintah, kita harus mari menjaga lingkungan. Terutama Raja Ampat terkenal dengan terumbu karang yang sehat. Dan bagaimana kita sebagai orang lokal dan juga pemerintah, mari kita kerjasama untuk melindungi laut dari segala ancaman, seperti ada binatang laut yang merusak karang, yaitu
saksi itu saya berpikir untuk pribadi saya lebih baik untuk menjaga karang dan menjaga ikan. Dari dulu orang-orang tua ikan banyak, tetapi sekarang ikan habis, malahan jauh. Saksi itu mendatangkan
Saksi itu ibaratnya seperti menabung uang di bank begitu. Macam daerah ini tidak mancing, ikan dari luar masuk, kita tidak mengganggu, dia bisa bertelur di daerah ini. Saya sudah bertelur, mungkin anaknya keluar, mungkin mamanya yang keluar, tetapi masih ada di sini. Sedikit keluar, tapi banyak masih ada di sini.
Pemancing, ya akhirnya tidak seperti dulu lagi. Atau sekarang saya mancing tidak seperti mendapat uang seperti yang homestay ini. Untuk sekarang kalau mancing homestay, kalau orang sudah datang tinggal di homestay walaupun hanya satu, tetapi tetap sudah ada uang.
Bintang laut itu berbahaya untuk karang yang cantik, karang yang besar, yang indah. Karang laut, bintang laut memakan. Kita snorkeling cek, karang yang tadi itu tidak ada, sudah mati. Informasikan bahwa daerah ini ada bintang yang memakan karang. Saya mengikut program itu, malahan lebih bagus untuk saya.
Bintang laut, bintang berduri, itu sangat berbahaya bagi lingkungan. Jika bintang laut semakin banyak di Kabupaten Raja Ampat, maka lingkungan kita, laut kita, karang kita akan mati. Maka lingkungan ini akan rusak dan kita tidak mendapat apa-apa untuk menjamin kehidupan kita di setiap hari. Ekonomi keluarga akan hancur karena laut. Laut ini sangat bermanfaat bagi kita, khusus orang Raja Ampat, orang Papua, dan kita untuk umumnya Indonesia. Yang paling berperan penting adalah pemerintah. Pesan saya untuk pemerintah Kabupaten Raja Ampat, jangan kita cuma terima pajak dari turis-turis yang datang untuk menikmati alam ini, tetapi saya minta pajak ini dimanfaatkan dengan baik untuk membiayai setiap orang lokal dan mengajar setiap orang lokal untuk bagaimana melindungi alam. Dan juga pebisnis homestay lokal, jangan kita hanya membangun homestay, tetapi mari kita membangun dengan cara yaitu ramah lingkungan.
Banyak orang yang datang ke Raja Ampat, dari situ saya mulai berpikir bagaimana caranya, ya saya harus menjaga lingkungan yang ada pada saya, supaya tidak rusak, sehingga orang datang melihat, oh tempat itu baik, karangnya baik, ya di situ saya bisa mendapat uang dari situ. Jadi saya sangat menjaga sekali lingkungan, apalagi di tempat homestay saya seperti begitu.
Saya banyak bicara sama orang kampung, keluarga, family, membangun homestay, terutama cek itu bintang laut. Karena bintang laut mematikan karang cantik.
Mari kita jaga bersama, karena laut adalah orang tua, laut adalah ayah untuk orang Papua dan orang Indonesia. Mari kita jaga segitiga karang dunia, supaya tetap terkenal di dunia sampai selama-lamanya.
Benjinya hati ini sayang, tapi aku rindu Raja.
Rumba, umba, umba, tumba, 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 kumba, zunga, zunga, cocoroco con negro, masih la rubera, pasire una rubera, sulla cabeça di mulher. Ntabamar, 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 ntamurugu jana azul, ntabamar, ntabamar, ntamurugu jana azul, 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 azul.
Look, Cap-Vert est un archipel, donc déjà de par sa géomorphologie et sa position stratégique au milieu de l'océan Atlantique fait qu'il y a de nombreux échanges. Et c'est dans ce contexte qu'il y a déjà quelques années, la FAO a identifié le Cap-Vert comme un pays pilote pour mettre en œuvre l'initiative Croissance Bleue.
Bom, é preciso dizer que a adoção desta carta vai mudar substancialmente toda a abordagem que Cabo Verde tem vindo a fazer na sua economia. A carta permite que haja um potencial enorme de aproveitamento em termos de legislação, em termos de investimento, para que a economia de Cabo Verde se volte realmente para aquilo que é a economia do ambiente que lhe rodeia, que é o mar.
Ce travail, c'est un travail dès le début qui était toujours fait en partenariat. On a toujours adopté une approche participative, déjà avec les principaux acteurs, c'est-à-dire ceux qui sont directement impliqués par tous ces écosystèmes marins.
Temos a questão dos recursos relacionados com o mar, temos a questão das pescas e também temos a questão do turismo. Veja que o turismo em Cabo Verde é um turismo relacionado com além do sol, com as praias e com os desportos náuticos.
Tem o turista que está falando, no hotel não tem um peixe que tem um gosto, porque aquele peixe também de estrangeiro, mas que tem necessidade, porque ali todo dia não tem peixe fresco ali na Pontão. É só para que a gente do hotel dirigir para ali, você compra peixe fresco.
It's so too. I saw too. Now it's only tuna. I don't know, maybe they import fish from other places, I don't know. But I know that we buy fish from the pier or from Palmeira too, because we have the local fish is the best we can have. Because if you get fish from the other islands, you don't know how long they got that fish. We don't know if the fish was frozen. You know, all the small details is very important for us. That's why we prefer to pay more for the fish, for the quality, to have the better quality. See, this is the ladies who buy the fish directly from the fishermen. When they came in a boat, they know already the fish they have, and they buy all and they sell it for a higher price. And they know what they're doing. Yes.
Sim, melhor espaço no futuro não está acreditando. Por ninguém que está acreditando ali na ponta durante o dia dentro do sol para vender um peixe. Se não tem um espaço, um mercado, um lugar com boas condições, com um frigorífico, que não pode ter um gelo, um coisa, não está saindo ali. Nunca está ficar ali ponto para não estragar ponto para pôr tripa peixe na chonga se usar lá.
Por isso, muitas vezes, a questão da perda pós-captura está mais ligada à questão da conservação. Quando, em algumas comunidades, não há meios de conservação e aí poderá haver perdas. Porque também não há muito hábito de consumir o pescado transformado de outra forma.
Nesse momento, como eu disse, a empresa está a implantar um sistema de regulamento interno, porque em Cabo Verde não existe uma cultura industrial, estamos a implantar. Claramente temos dificuldade, porque a nível da legislação laboral não está voltada para as indústrias. E temos essa dificuldade, mas que pouco a pouco vamos tentar de resolver com o Ministério da Economia e Trabalho e com a Direção de Trabalho.
Daí que temos que promover uma investigação para que possamos então explorar, sim, mas dentro dos limites de sustentabilidade, de modo portanto, a promover essa tal economia azul. Portanto, porque a economia azul é exatamente um pouco mudar o hábito e portanto, explorar numa ótica mais ecossistêmica. Portanto, promover outras cadeias de valores, promover outros tipos de atividades.
Não tem algo que na nossa pesca localize. Isso é uma questão para nós organizar. Para nós organizar, para cada que nós respeita. Para nós respeita, porque tem pesca artesanal, tem pesca de turismo, tem pesca de indústria. Se cada um de nós não organizar, para nós respeitar a pesca, para o futuro nós também ter uma vida mais melhor do que a grinça.
The iconic sound of the Queen Conch signals many things across the Caribbean. For some, particularly in the OECS territories of Grenada, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it is the call of opportunity.
You could pay your bills, feed your family.
My dad, that is what he does up to this day, and send all of us to school, and even grandchildren now is going to school from that industry as well.
In October 2020, the OECS, in collaboration with the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development and CITES, launched the Blue Biotrade Project. It was financed by the European Union through the RIGHT program.
I want to situate this in the context of the OECS Commission's work plan. Our strategic work plan for this triennium includes a strategic objective of reinventing our economy in the context of the devastation to our economies caused by the pandemic and all climate change and all the other crises that we have been assaulted by.
The Blue Biotrade Project aims to empower fishers and small-scale coastal operators from Grenada, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines to produce and trade Queen Conch responsibly.
We need to understand that in biodiversity, sustainability is important so that those benefiting from the activity or in the activity can continue doing that for generations.
The Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, popularly known as CITES, provides guidance on the sustainable management of this invaluable resource.
In terms of conch, once you're exporting the meat, you would require a CITES permit from St. Lucia. If you are importing it, you would require a CITES permit from the country of origin.
The three pillars of CITES is to ensure that international trade in CITES-listed species is legal, sustainable, and traceable.
The information gathered through Phase 1 of the Blue Biotrade Project is being studied and incorporated into an action plan for the advancement of the Queen Conch industry. Key to future success is an ongoing stock assessment to determine what corrective measures need to be implemented.
What we're seeing with the fishers that we interviewed so far is that they're having to go deeper and deeper and on longer dives to catch the same amount of conch.
Most times about 80 to 100 feet, but there are places where that you have to go to about 115, 120 feet sometimes.
We know that we have been seeing some degradation in the habitats.
The silt from development on land affects the grass, the seagrass, which they live on.
Presently, the Queen Conch is also under threat due to issues such as overfishing and climate change. The Queen Conch is widely regarded as a delicacy, and many believe there is potential to explore new ways of enjoying the seafood regionally and internationally.
Every part of the conch can be used. The shell can be used for ornaments, to make beads.
It can be used to make carbon neutral cement. It also can be used to make artificial reefs.
I had called far as India. They make buttons and necklaces.
In 2020, conch made up 62.7% of St. Vincent's exported fish and fish products.
We shipped, as I mentioned, to Dubai.
Our main markets is in the US. We move anywhere from 5 to 10,000 pounds by monthly.
In Miami presently, a pound of kongs is 30 US dollars.
We are actually stepping into not unknown territory, because for years fisher folk have done their thing, but moving it to a new level of sophistication, a new level of value, and a new level of prosperity.
When people talk about greening an economy, they often mean different things. So in this next segment, we'll learn what it means to shift from a linear take, make, waste economy that ends up overrunning our planet with waste, to a green circular economy where the entire lifespan of a product, from cradle to grave to cradle, is environmentally friendly and does not result in waste. Let's hear how groups from fashion leaders to indigenous communities are putting the principles of green circular economies into practice.
Living systems have been around for a few billion years and will be around for many more. In the living world, there's no landfill. Instead, materials flow. One species' waste is another's food, energy is provided by the sun, things grow, then die, and nutrients return to the soil safely. And it works. Yet as humans, we've adopted a linear approach. We take, we make, and we dispose. A new phone comes out, so we ditch the old one. Our washing machine packs up, so we buy another. Each time we do this, we're eating into a finite supply of resources and often producing toxic waste. It simply can't work long term. So what can? If we accept that the living world's cyclical model works, can we change our way of thinking so that we too operate a circular economy? Let's start with the biological cycle. How can our waste build capital rather than reduce it? By rethinking and redesigning products and components, and the packaging they come in, we can create safe and compostable materials that help grow more stuff. As they say in the movies, no resources have been lost in the making of this material. So what about the washing machines, mobile phones, fridges? We know they don't biodegrade. Here, we're talking about another sort of rethink, a way to cycle valuable metals, polymers, and alloys so they maintain their quality and continue to be useful beyond the shelf life of individual products. What if the goods of today became the resources of tomorrow? It makes commercial sense. Instead of the throw away and replace culture we've become used to, we'd adopt a return and renew one, where products and components are designed to be disassembled and regenerated. One solution may be to rethink the way we view ownership. What if we never actually owned our technologies? We simply licensed them from the manufacturers. Now, let's put these two cycles together. Imagine if we could design products to come back to their makers, their technical materials being reused and their biological parts increasing agricultural value. And imagine that these products are made and transported using renewable energy. Here we have a model that builds prosperity long term. And the good news is, there are already companies out there who are beginning to adopt this way of working. But the circular economy isn't about one manufacturer changing one product. It's about all the interconnecting companies that form our infrastructure and economy coming together. It's about energy. It's about rethinking the operating system itself. We have a fantastic opportunity to open new perspectives and new horizons. Instead of remaining trapped in the frustrations of the present, with creativity and innovation, we really can rethink and redesign our future.
When we talk about linear to circular, from a straight line to a circle, we make this circular economy idea sound really simple. And one of the things that appeals to me is that in essence it is. The first things that I learned about circular economy is this idea of it being made of two different types of material, technical and biological. So firstly, technical, what is the technical cycle?
Technical cycle is basically anything that doesn't biodegrade. So it would be metals, rare earth metals, most plastics, polymers, things that you would want to recover within a circular economy and feed back into the system. It could be through recycling, that could be chemical recycling, it could be physical recycling, anything that doesn't biodegrade. And the biological cycle is the side of the circular economy that would biodegrade. Now, you could think of that as being, food or wood, but it's very, very broad. It could be cotton. It could be a form of wood which is chipboard. It could be anything that, if it's designed correctly, which is also very important, would physically biodegrade and return to the soil. And it's very important to distinguish between the two, because the technical materials you want to recover and feed back into the economy. You can't let those lie on the ground and disappear, because they won't, apart from perhaps some metals will eventually rust away. But they're very valuable. The biological cycle is valuable in a different way, because it's biological material which for billions of years has been returning to the earth and regenerating soil. And actually, we've kind of broken that cycle with timber, with cotton, with food waste, with human waste. We're not returning that to the soil and regenerating cycles. So you think of those two, technical and biological cycles.
And today one of the problems is we mix those things up.
We mix them up all the time.
We combine biological materials with technical materials in ways that they can't be separated.
And clothing would be a great example with a polycotton. We can't recover those two different fibers. They're all woven together.
You mentioned recycling. How is it part of circular economy?
Well, recycling really, yes, you want to do it, absolutely. Of course, we want to get the materials and feed them back into the system. But it's almost the loop of last resort. Most of the value in a phone, for example, is the phone. Of course, the components have value, and of course, the materials have value, and you want to recover them at the end of the life of that phone, but actually the phone itself has the most value. So yes, we want to recycle, and packaging would be an example of a very high volume, low value material that you would want to design to be 100% recyclable if it were plastic, for example. But then you also have these other products that sit in a different space where you want to keep them as the product for as long as possible.
So in essence, if you have to make something again, that surely takes more money, energy.
Absolutely. And I think a great example of that is remanufactured engines. Well, if you think about making an engine, for example, that engine is a phenomenal piece of equipment that's had millions of hours of R&D put into it, and it works. Most remanufactured engines today have actually broken. They come into a factory having been broken, they get completely stripped down, ultrasonically cleaned, and then the majority of the parts get reassembled into a new engine. About 80% of the original parts are in the new engine, the remanufactured engine, 20% will be replacement parts. But that engine then has 80% less energy and 80% less material in it compared to a new one. So you're saving so much money and resource through keeping it in the system. Now that's a broken engine. If you can predict when an engine's about to break and then remanufacture it before it breaks, you'll be changing much, much, much smaller parts. And if you design it for that, then it'll be a much cleverer system. When you look at cars today, they're parked the majority of the time. Over 90% of the time, the car is just parked, not being used. And then when it is used, the majority of the time, it's got one or two people in it. So within a circular economy, of course, you would design the car so you can remanufacture it, so you can disassemble it, so you could recover the materials. but we probably wouldn't own it. We'd probably have access to it somehow, either leasing it, or you would pay per mile, or like Zipcar or Streetcar. There are so many examples now, particularly in cities where more and more people are living, whereby you have access to this car. And once the car isn't yours and you don't physically buy it, then almost the manufacturer's incentivized to build a slightly different car, because they don't want to build it as cheaply as possible to sell, because they only make money when they sell another car. They want to make a car that works, that's remanufacturable, that they can recover the materials from, because they're probably leasing that into a system. They will get that back. They will want to be able to get as much value out of that for the second cycle or the third cycle as possible.
Okay, from remanufacturing, what about things like repair and maintenance? Are they the next level up?
Well, repair and maintenance keep things in use at their highest level. If you can catch something before it breaks, that would clearly be the right thing to do before you have a catastrophic failure that needs a remanufacture of that engine, for example. So yes, repair is absolutely part of a circular economy. That could be a phone, it could be a car, it could be clothing. How can you keep that thing that's been made with the energy and materials in it in use for as long as possible? It's definitely a growing industry. Several times I've repaired my phone, taken it apart, followed the instructions. It takes a couple of hours, but actually by the time you've gone off and taken the phone somewhere and paid someone else to do it and gone back and collected it and not had your phone for a while, it's actually quite inconvenient. And I think there are people who would love to fix it themselves. There are other people who absolutely don't want to do that. So there are different options, but it's great to see this space growing.
Then lastly, on this technical cycle, sharing is part of the picture, and it could be related to some of the other loops that we just mentioned, but we're seeing more people share the products that they own.
Well, if you think about a power drill, most people have one in the home, but most people hardly ever use it. And it's generally not a very high quality drill, and it will probably break when you've used it just a few times because it's bottom end of the market. And you can take that to the next level with China, with Y Closet. You effectively lease your clothes. You're sharing your clothes with other people, but you don't think of it like that. You're leasing them. You're having this phenomenal box of great clothes delivered to your home, and then off it goes. And so sharing doesn't just have to be between you and your neighbor or you and someone down the road. It can actually be done in a much more sophisticated manner.
So that's the technical cycle, things like repair, remanufacturing, recycling. What about the biological cycle? Because the routes are going to be quite different if we want to make use of all the materials and value within that cycle. You can't rent or repair a sandwich.
Not really. But if you think of the principles, they're very similar. So technical products, keep them in use for as long as possible. Think about this building. This is timber. This has been in use since the 1500s. This is being kept at a very high quality because it's doing a very important job. That could have been burnt in the 1500s, and then it would have been very low quality very quickly, albeit doing a useful job. So if you think about applying that to today's economy, a piece of timber could be burnt, which we do in many countries, or that piece of timber could be made into a table. At the end of the life of that table, the table could be broken down and turned into particle board. At the end of the life of that particle board, it could be broken down and it could turn into compost if it was intelligently designed. So think about what we call cascading. How can you use the item you have for as long as possible? It could be said for cotton. You could make a T-shirt. That T-shirt could become wadding or stuffing or padding or sound insulation. And then eventually, if it's non-toxic, organic and biodegradable, it could feed back into that biological system. So it's not just the biodegradable things we think of, like food waste or human waste or leaves from trees. It's also the bigger things, these things and the fibers. How can we keep those in use for as long as possible? How can we keep them at the highest value? So many loops, so many innovations, and a different way of thinking. If you put a toxic ink on a piece of paper when you print it, then actually you can't really recycle that paper and turn it into, cereal box, for example. So think about how you design. Think about what system you're designing for.
And on the biological cycle, people often talk about things being regenerative or regenerating natural systems. What do we mean by regenerative, and why is it such an important part of that biological story?
I see, regeneration is an opportunity. We've been so extractive and so consumptive for so many years. We talk about, 60 harvests left before topsoil degradation means we can't really grow anything in the way we do today. I mean, that's quite critical. But if you can collect all the biological material, the human waste, the food production waste, and feed that back into the system, you have the ability to regenerate it. In today's world, there's a phenomenal opportunity. You know, we're so used to thinking, let's just make this last a bit longer. Let's eke out what we've got a bit longer. But this is a completely different way of thinking. Let's actually make it better. Let's regenerate it. Let's make it richer. Let's make it hold more water. Let's make it better land.
It's that flipped perception from how can we just minimize the negative impacts to how can we
build something better,
to have a positive impact with all the different activities that are going on in the economy every day.
Absolutely. It's a completely different mindset.
Hiện nay, các hình thức khai thác, sản xuất, vận chuyển, tiêu thụ và thải bỏ nguyên liệu của chúng ta đang dẫn đến việc tiêu thụ năng lượng quá mức và lượng khí thải CO2 tăng mạnh. Kèm theo đó là ô nhiễm đất, nước và không khí đang ở mức đáng báo động. Vì vậy, chúng ta cần một giải pháp bền vững hơn. Xin giới thiệu, kinh tế tuần hoàn. Kinh tế tuần hoàn là mô hình kinh tế nhằm giảm khai thác nguyên liệu, vật liệu, kéo dài vòng đời sản phẩm, hạn chế chất thải phát sinh, giảm thiểu tác động xấu đến môi trường và phục hồi hệ sinh thái. Mạng lưới kinh tế tuần hoàn tại Việt Nam được thiết kế để hỗ trợ các bên tham gia liên quan hướng tới việc chuyển dịch sang kinh tế tuần hoàn thông qua các hợp phần, đối thoại chính sách, chia sẻ kiến thức và nghiên cứu điển hình, thông tin hỗ trợ tài chính, diễn đàn doanh nghiệp, cơ sở dữ liệu. Tham gia các hoạt động của mạng lưới kinh tế tuần hoàn Việt Nam và cùng chúng tôi giúp Việt Nam chuyển sang một nền kinh tế carbon thấp và xanh. Để biết thêm thông tin chi tiết, vui lòng truy cập website vietnamcirculareconomy.vn.
My name is Achim Steiner. I'm the head of the United Nations Development Programme, or UNDP. I'm here in a recycling center in the Isla Grande de Chiloé in the south of Chile. As part of a new network, the center is driving forward new approaches to waste management with the support of UNDP and Luxembourg. That includes innovative ways to manage the supply chain of solid waste. That is keeping products and materials in use for longer, drastically reducing waste and pollution. Crucially, this is helping to protect the environment, advance climate action, and create new jobs and livelihoods. These centers, developed by the community, are also empowering local communities, especially women, to take a lead role in advancing the circular economy model here in Chile. That is exactly the approach we need to translate from the local to global level to advance the Sustainable Development Goals. Indeed, the pioneering efforts of countries like Chile are now inspiring bold new action to revive the health and well-being of people and planet in every corner of the globe. Thank you for joining me on this visit today, and to celebrate the initiative and creativity of local communities, of their municipalities, and ultimately the global response to a waste management problem in our century. Thank you.
ដើម្បីចូលរួមដោះស្រាយបញ្ហាសំរាមនៅកម្ពុជាគម្រោងជំរុញបរិយាកាសអំណោយផលសម្រាប់ការអភិវឌ្ឍដោយចីរភាព BEST ត្រូវបានបង្កើតឡើងគម្រោងនេះលើកកម្ពស់សេដ្ឋកិច្ចវិលជុំដែលជាវិធីសាស្ត្រមួយប្រើប្រាស់ធនធានឲ្យអស់លទ្ធភាពតាមដែលអាចធ្វើទៅបានគម្រោង BEST ជំរុញនិងលើកទឹកចិត្តឲ្យមានការចូលរួមសហការពីសន្តាគារភោជនីយដ្ឋានផ្សារនិងសហគមន៍ក្នុងការទាញយកតម្លៃសេដ្ឋកិច្ចពីប្រភពធនធាននិងសំណល់នានារមណីយដ្ឋានថ្ងៃបางឆ័ត្រនៅក្នុងខេត្តកែបបាននឹងកំពុងអនុវត្តគំរូអាជីវកម្មតាមបែបសេដ្ឋកិច្ចវិលជុំតាមរយៈការអនុវត្តគោលការណ៍គ្មានសំណល់សម្រាមនៅទីនេះសំណល់គ្រប់ប្រភេទត្រូវបានថ្លឹងនិងកត់ត្រាជារៀងរាល់ថ្ងៃសម្បកឡាំងដបឬកំប៉ុងផ្លាស្ទិកអាលូមីញ៉ូមនិងដែកត្រូវបានលក់ទៅឲ្យឥតចាយជារៀងរាល់ខែនៅក្នុងបន្ទប់នីមួយៗដបទឹកផ្លាស្ទិកត្រូវបានដាក់ជំនួសវិញដោយដបកែវក្នុងមួយឆ្នាំថ្ងៃបางឆ័ត្របានចូលរួមកាត់បន្ថយដបផ្លាស្ទិកបានរហូតដល់ទៅ 26,280 ដបសម្ភារៈប្រើប្រាស់ផ្សេងៗនៅក្នុងបន្ទប់ទឹកសុទ្ធតែជាផលិតផលដែលងាយរលាយនៅក្នុងបរិស្ថានប្រអប់វេចខ្ចប់ធ្វើពីក្រដាសត្រូវបានដាក់ជំនួសប្រអប់ស្នោសំណល់ម្ហូបអាហារនិងសំណល់សរីរាង្គផ្សេងទៀតត្រូវបានយកទៅធ្វើជាជីកំប៉ុស្តសម្រាប់ប្រើប្រាស់នៅក្នុងចម្ការបន្លែរបស់រមណីយដ្ឋានផ្ទាល់សំណល់ប្រេងឆានៅក្នុងផ្ទះបាយត្រូវបានបរិច្ចាគទៅឲ្យ Naga Earth ដើម្បីបំលែងទៅជាឥន្ធនៈជីវសាស្ត្រតើលោកអ្នកបានកាត់បន្ថយសំណល់នៅក្នុងអាជីវកម្មបានកម្រិតណាដែរតោះចូលរួមកាត់បន្ថយសំរាមទាំងអស់គ្នា
We are facing development challenges that are increasing at a rapid pace.
គឺពាក់ព័ន្ធជាមួយនឹងការប្រែប្រួលអាកាសធាតុការប្រែប្រួលអាកាសធាតុគឺជាបញ្ហាមួយមិនមែនតែសម្រាប់ប្រទេសកម្ពុជាទេដែលជួបប្រទះគឺនៅលើពិភពលោកតែម្ដង
The big challenge in Cambodia is about waste because we use only one time and after you throw away, so it become a lot of waste every day.
Human resource is very important and we need to consider their capacity building from childhood until they get the jobs to contribute to society.
It's not just about finding students jobs, but when they actually get those jobs that they can be innovative and creative.
Women in Cambodia, they have the pressure from the family and also the society.
The most pressing challenge for the growth of the clean energy market is demonstrating the integration of renewable energy to meet the really rapidly growing demand for energy.
We can't afford to move at the same speed any longer. We must start to move faster.
To reimagine development, we must learn to experiment.
We need to be better at telling powerful story to bring people together.
To look for local solution at the grassroots level.
UNDP's Accelerator Labs are a network of 60 labs. They cover 78 countries and territories. The aim of the labs are to reimagine development in the 21st century and to speed up the delivery of development solutions.
We need to create supporting system that women can be engaged.
Our vision is that Cambodia is the center of innovation.
We need everyone sitting around the table
to learn how to talk with each other.
វាទាមទារឲ្យមានការចូលរួមចាពីប្រជាពលរដ្ឋចាពីអាជ្ញាធរហើយនិងពីថ្នាក់ដឹកនាំរបស់យើងផងដែរ
We need to work together to reimagine development and to move faster than the challenges that we face. Greening the economy can sometimes feel daunting for both businesses and consumers, but we're hearing from young entrepreneurs who can help show us the way. Today we have Edda Hamar in the Gold Coast. Edda, you are in charge of Undress Runways, which help give exposure to sustainable and ethical fashion designers through your events and animations. Can you give us an idea of the innovations from these designers?
We use the garment life cycle to explore the different techniques. For example, whether it is an organic cotton or whether it is a zero waste pattern cutting technique, ethical production in factories where there would be people are paid a living wage, even are provided with training, sometimes accommodation and even childcare, even things like solar powered factories and carbon neutral production.
And for us on the side of consumers, what can we keep in mind when we're doing our shopping, for example, based on your experience in selecting designers?
It is really about having a creative mindset on how we access clothing. It's about questioning who we are buying from, how our clothes are made. It's about educating ourselves and also thinking, do I need this or can I borrow it from a friend? Can it be rented? Can I find something that I already own? Because the most sustainable garment that you own, it already exists in your wardrobe.
These are very helpful reminders. And going on to, the disruptions caused by the pandemic and the need to continuously evolve as any savvy entrepreneur should do, can you tell us more about your next projects and mission?
Yes, well, pandemics and events and runway shows, they don't go well together. I've started to look at how I can create change from the inside of organizations. I think we actually have to realize the power of having conversations within our own companies, even if they're not from the fashion industry. Anyone can start to have those conversations with their employer.
So you're saying just like consumers, employees can also make a difference. Can you tell us more of maybe how this can apply to a company's import or export transactions?
Absolutely. I think it's important to create a culture within companies where asking questions is encouraged. Who are we trading with? Where are our products coming from? What does the procurement department look like? Do we have ethical supply chains? And really creating conversation around that. I think together we all have to find our own way to make change and our own way to voice our values. And I think that some of the easiest places to start is actually just starting to talk to your boss, your manager, your CEO, and take that first step with someone that you trust, with someone that you see every day, and let that be the start of something really, really big.
Thank you so much, and good luck on your next endeavors.
Communities are the backbone of most of the products and services that we enjoy. From coffee to ecotourism, from pepper to beauty products. In this next segment, we'll take a look at how communities and CEOs from around the world are working to forge new fair trade agreements and that put communities at the heart of green business. Let's hear what they have to say.
We at MAN have an heritage of natural products. So we came here in Nepal in order to source very innovative new raw material, which is called timur, native from Nepal.
The main thrust of this project is ultimately link community to the international market.
Timur, mostly it is being collected by the poor people. Very much happy to welcome people all over the world.
अब पेट दुखे खोकी लाग्यो बाबत हामीले त्यसलाई अब हामीले त्यो खोकी लाग्यो भने निको हुन्छ चिसो लाग्यो बेला त्यो पेट दुख्यो भन्छौँ हामी हैन अनि हामीलाई सबै कुरामा हामीलाई त्यो टिमुरले राम्रो गर्छ त्यो स्वास्थ्यलाई राम्रो गर्छ.
We have something good for the perfumer, but also something good for the flavorist. So it's rare to have this kind of product. Another part very important with the new ingredient is the sourcing. They understand that the quality is key.
In terms of quality, we train the collectors to harvest only in the last September to October. That is the best harvest time. The drying is also quite important. After we receive timur berry from the collectors or farmers, to make sure best quality to MAN.
When you source raw material, we have two main principles. We have to be attentive, understand the context, well understand the condition, the history, the culture, the environment, and then we have to be responsible.
Women generally in Nepal are a bit discriminated. Only 20% of women are able to write their names.
If we work directly with the collectors and the farmers, they are getting the good price.
हामी त के गर्दैछौँ यो टिमुर पालेर पनि के गर्नु त यसको मूल्य पनि जान्न तर यो टिमुरले हामीलाई सुधार्न खोजेको छ अलिअलि यस्तो अब आजभोलि यस्तो भाउ जम्छ भन्नेमा हामी धेरै खुसी छौँ अनि भन्दाखेरि हामीले धेरै खुसी लागेको छ
We would like this partnership to continue for generations to come.
Just imagine a nature-based economy with a performance outcome from a product that benefits the community, that helps preserve and enhance biodiversity, that supports human rights, that mitigates climate change, shifting the power, community decision-making.
Aveda partners with over 100 nonprofit and NGO organizations around the world. The foundation of that model is clean water, and that is Aveda's core cause that we focus on. Our partners each have their own expertise, and they all offer either a high-performing quality product or service that benefits community supports human rights preserves and protects biodiversity and helps mitigate climate change. Another very important element is our approach, where we do a lot of listening and learning to determine the solutions for the challenges that we're collectively working together to tackle. We treat each other with mutual trust, respect, and dignity.
Profitability cannot be an excuse for not having or not taking your responsibility very, very seriously. Lowering your environmental footprint, increasing your social impact, it needs to go hand in hand. So we decided to do our part.
My best advice on how to conduct yourself at a meeting is from a Noongar elder from Australia who said there is a reason why we have 2 ears and only 1 mouth. One has to learn to listen.
En la zona del N, la comercialización o el ingreso era por la venta de maderas. En los años 2010 se vio reflejado de que ya no había que vender. Habíamos talado muchos árboles y cuando nos damos cuenta ya no había nada atrás, no había bosque, ¿no? Pero ¿cómo paramos? ¿Cuál es la alternativa para poder generar ingresos económicos para la comunidad o para las familias? Por eso se crea esta asociación Kemito N para cultivar el cacao y el café y así generar ingresos y a no talar más bosques.
Mejor que los mejorados de los de práctica nosotros, porque nosotros a veces atacan con enfermedades, ¿no? Por eso tenemos problemas nosotros y después depende de nosotros vamos a hacer, ¿no? Para fumigar, ¿no? Lo que está haciendo, enseñando a los estudiantes, ¿no? Para que mejoramiento en la plantación.
Bien, bueno, yo trabajo para dos comunidades, ¿no? En las comunidades yashánicas, bueno, estoy ganando bastante experiencia con ellos. El reto es, pues, producir más, ¿no? En este caso, ¿no? Bien saben que aquí son pocas entidades que llegan, ¿no? Más bien gracias a Caimito-Ende estamos llegando aquí, ¿no? Y acá, pues, se dispone bastante de equipos, ¿no? La cual que dificulta las actividades que se pueden realizar. No, pero aún así estamos ahí, gracias a ellos dan bastante empeño y aún así estamos dando de todo, ¿no? De nosotros, de ellos más que nada, para poder realizar las actividades.
Sí, estamos ahorita en tema de enviando muestras a Nueva Zelanda y a otros países. Y bueno, la idea sí es llegar a negociar a un comprador que compran especial y que valoren el tema de medio ambiente y en el tema de tradicional cultural de los Asháninkas. Bueno, estamos trabajando bastante en eso. Con un proyecto de mejorar en el tema de cosecha, post cosecha, con secadores, con el tema de centralizar, de cosechar en cerezo y así uniformizar el tema de fermentación.
Lo que hemos hecho nosotros es recuperar sus chacras y mejorarlas, enseñarles nuevas técnicas para que ellos puedan tener más productividad. Además, el cacao puede cultivarse, digamos, en armonía con el bosque. Puede cultivarse bajo el dosel del bosque, en cierta medida, haciendo un manejo de la sombra.
No solamente la asociación envía el grano, sino también está enviando ahora manteca y polvo. Y hacemos todos los procesos y después ya lo llevamos también al puerto de Callao para la embarcación a su destino, a Australia.
que es el momento de nuestro cliente más fuerte que tenemos.
Queremos demostrar al Estado peruano y al mundo de que sí se puede, que Quemito N o que las comunidades nativas o indígenas pueden hacer, pueden responder la demanda del mercado. Eso es lo que queremos Quemito N, reflejado esas exportaciones en la economía familiar.
Mikoko Pamoja is a pioneering mangrove conservation and village development project in Gazi Bay on the south coast of Kenya. Mikoko Pamoja means mangroves together, and that is exactly what is happening. Instead of cutting down mangroves, the villagers are protecting these blue forests. Mikoko Pamoja is a model for mangrove villages around the world. It's the first community project to use the sale of biocarbon credits from the mangrove ecosystem to bring conservation and development together. The sale of biocarbon credits not only funds the conservation efforts, but also creates jobs and pays for access to clean water and education. Through Mikoko Pamoja, the blue forests are now being protected and seen for their true value.
I've been chopping mangrove for 5 years, and I stopped after the coming of Mikoko Pamoja and discover and realize the importance of Coco Pamoja for the sake of the community development.
The project started in 2013, a joint initiative between the Gazi Bay villagers, volunteers from global NGOs, and research institutions in Kenya and the UK. The project employs forest guards who are often based in a watchtower to deter cutting of the mangroves. Villagers go out to the 117 hectares of protected mangrove forest 4 times each year. This is to monitor growth and biodiversity in the forest. Trees are measured and key indicators of ecosystem health are checked, like crab numbers. Mikoko Pamoja is also a reforestation project. The carbon benefits from protecting and planting mangroves are substantial. Not only do mangroves retain carbon in their own biomass, they also lock it into the marine muds. More than 1,500 tons of carbon per hectare is stored beneath the forests. That's more than 8 times that of forests on land. Local people now have long-term security of protein from viable fisheries. Crops are protected, and the coast is naturally defended against sea storms. The community decides how they want to spend the project income. Making sure each child has a school book has been an early priority, and the schools are now sending students onto high schools for the first time. The vision for Mikoko Pamoja is to ensure enough support is found to keep the project developing and to roll out the project as a flagship for other blue forest villages in Kenya and elsewhere. The first replication of the project is already underway at Vanga Blue Forest, close to Tanzania.
We created Community Tours Siankan on 1999 to help create work in the Maya community and also to educate adults and kids at school why Siankan is so important to us.
We have different programs at the schools to educate the kids from Mayan villages, because without education they can have the same opportunities, so we are give them the opportunities to have a better life. Community Tours has a real commitment in terms of ecological sustainable development. That's why we are supporting the artisans and the ladies that made the gem.
Ejemplo, way to kahe chumpom ti ulash chupo bete akabe ako formar como emea wow katmia to que yo soy antam taking ti akabe ako bot ko shoko para.
Esta iniciativa la realizamos como parte del programa de Amigos de Siancán y creo que el promover este tipo de acciones con la misma gente con la que crecimos y gente de nuestra misma zona, pues es una oportunidad para ellos el poder acceder a mejor oportunidades de vida.
Es muy importante para Community Tours Siancán preservar el medio ambiente, los recursos naturales, porque es donde nosotros trabajamos y aprovechamos de manera sustentable para la generación de empleos, para la gente de la comunidad y para todos los colaboradores de Community Tours Siancán.
As a representative of a global corporation,
we would like to join our voices today to issue a warning and make a commitment.
Global commodity trade has already altered 1/3 of the world's land surface for agriculture. Production of commodities continues to trigger habitat loss, degradation, and fragmentation, driving species to extinction and destroying the livelihoods of communities who depend on ecosystems for their livelihoods.
We need to rethink the way we produce and consume our food, our clothes, our cosmetics. Continuing with business as usual is not an option if we want to solve our planetary crises and achieve shared prosperity.
We believe that companies have a responsibility to contribute to social and environmental good and to have a positive impact on the communities in which they operate. Businesses need to step up and go beyond what is required by law to help foster sustainable and resilient communities.
Indigenous and community-led businesses hold the key for a green and inclusive recovery.
Companies can affect meaningful change by building strong partnerships with community-led businesses.
This is why we commit today to strengthen the role of communities across our supply chain.
By increasing the percentage of products that are responsibly sourced from indigenous people and local communities.
By creating fair incomes and ensuring fair trade and benefits sharing with local producers.
By ensuring free, prior and informed consent from indigenous people when working with genetic resources.
And by increasing transparency across our supply chain to prevent ecosystems degradation and human rights violation.
In short, we commit to place communities at the center of sustainable production.
Lavazza worked with many communities all over the coffee producing world to source the raw ingredients of our coffee production.
At MAN, we value the expertise and respect the tradition of communities around the world with which we partner to source the best ingredients for our flavors and fragrances, such as myrrh with the Himbas in Namibia, Starax and the Pech in Honduras, Timo pepper from communities of women in the Salian region in Nepal, or patchouli with the Guyaneses in Indonesia.
Unilever works in communities all over the world to source ingredients such as palm oil, soy, cocoa, and vegetables. Earlier this year, we announced a set of ambitious commitments and actions to help build a more equitable, inclusive society. This included ensuring that everyone who directly provides goods and services to us earns at least a living wage or income by 2030, and spending €2 billion annually with suppliers owned and managed by people from underrepresented groups by 2025.
Our success will be measured by the positive impacts we have on communities and the planet.
Every business has a role to play in building a better, brighter, and more sustainable future.
The solutions are in sight.
What does your company do to help communities thrive?
Join us in helping to put healthy, resilient communities
at the center of sustainable production.
In this last segment of the day, we'll take a look at how business, trade, and supply chains can all be aligned with a nature-positive future. We'll hear about how different organizations, from private sector companies like Estée Lauder to local communities to trade organizations, are all helping to foster business practices that align with nature. We'll also discover how the alignment can have a ripple effect across the whole economy.
The World Benchmarking Alliance is building a movement to incentivize the private sector's contribution to reaching a sustainable future that works for everyone. In 2015, the UN has set out a supremely ambitious and transformational plan of action for people, planet, and prosperity. These 17 Sustainable Development Goals demonstrate the scale and the ambition of this agenda, and it's stimulating action in areas of critical importance to humanity and the planet. The private sector has a crucial role to play in advancing on these Sustainable Development Goals and contributing to the system transformations that are needed. But this requires real change in the way that the impact of business is measured in order for us to boost motivation and stimulate further action. Together with stakeholders from the public sector, industries, business, finance, and civil society, the WBA, the World Benchmarking Alliance in short, is developing transformative benchmarks to measure companies' progress against these global challenges that we are all facing. Biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse is one of the top 5 threats to humanity. Over half of the world's GDP is dependent on ecosystem services, and it has been estimated that nature-positive actions could generate up to $10 trillion. Despite intergovernmental commitments made in 2010, biodiversity loss and ecosystem degradation are occurring at an unparalleled rate. And it has never been more urgent for society and the economy to adopt a nature-positive approach. To achieve the Paris Agreement and the expected post-2020 global biodiversity framework, we must examine how the private sector contributes to stable and resilient ecosystems which enable humanity and nature to coexist sustainably. We must look at how to hold companies to account for their impact on people and planet. It's within this contextual landscape that the World Benchmarking Alliance will be publishing its first nature benchmark in December of this year, just ahead of the UN Biodiversity Conference, the so-called COP15 in Montreal. This benchmark will ultimately assess 1,000 of the world's most influential companies across 22 industries on how they are protecting and restoring nature. This December, we will publish 400 of those 1,000 companies, and the remaining 600 will follow in 2023. This nature benchmark is designed to assess companies thoroughly, and it will include indicators where stakeholders' expectations are high. For example, companies must demonstrate that they are progressing towards a science-based targets on GHG emission. They need to show a net zero deforestation objective and demonstrate how their water withdrawal efforts are effective within water scarce context. The benchmark will also assess companies on more novel topics, such as circular economy objectives, invasive alien species, and following a mitigation hierarchy principle. At its core, this nature benchmark is designed to encourage companies to start taking action on biodiversity, as well as measuring their existing efforts. For example, we will examine how companies are understanding their biodiversity impact and dependency, as well as how they can act to halt damaging trends. As we are moving towards the publication of this benchmark, the data paints a stark picture of what corporate performance on nature and biodiversity currently looks, and the seismic challenge that lies ahead of us. That's why we will invite all stakeholders to review our results, and that are all freely and publicly available resources. By providing greater transparency on corporate performance and accountability, we expect to contribute towards the measurement of our planetary needs and urging companies to adopt a nature-positive strategy that leaves no one behind. Thank you.
Trade has been an essential part of human existence for millennia, but how and what we trade needs serious review. Not just because of the negative impacts which contribute to greenhouse gas emissions and nature loss, but because the potential of trade in sustainable goods and much needed technology. The three statements we've heard today strike at very important drivers of the triple planetary crisis. The Trade and Environmental Sustainability Structured Discussion Statement provides a space for WTO members to discuss how trade policy can mitigate and adapt to climate change and reverse biodiversity loss. And with regards to biodiversity, therefore, this means reaching conclusions on the negotiations on fisheries subsidies so that our fish stocks can thrive. The statement on fossil fuel subsidies targets one of the biggest barriers to renewable energy. These subsidies encourage greenhouse gas emissions and wasteful consumption and drive down the price of primary plastics, adding to the plastic pollution crisis. And the statement on plastics encourages the exploration of ways trade can promote the transition to a circular economy for plastics. We need to be clear on the full range of consequences of plastic pollution and act at source to address them all. I welcome the three statements. I encourage every WTO member state to get involved, not just in each individual work stream, but in bringing all of them together, because these challenges are intertwined. We can work with partner organizations to enable the business sector to adopt sustainable initiatives in related sectors.
Guatemala's forests are under threat from agriculture, from poor forest management, and from illegal logging. But this community is doing things differently, and the deforestation tide is starting to turn. When the market gives back. Sustainable use is helping improve forest management and lift communities out of poverty in Guatemala.
Yo recuerdo exactamente en el año 2005, cuando conocí a Sacalá, estaban trabajando 3 personas dentro de la empresa. Hoy por hoy vemos a 12 personas trabajando. Gracias al proyecto de la Organización Internacional de las Mareas Tropicales de Gestión Empresarial, ahora Sacalá, vemos como una MIPYME mucho más estructurada. Tiene su propia gerencia, tiene un ejecutivo de ventas, tiene un coordinador de producción, sus 10 carpinteros, y aparte de ello también ya se ha incorporado la labor de las mujeres acá en la planta.
Ahora, como ustedes ven, de que ya también las mujeres estamos demostrando que también podemos trabajar en una carpintería.
Se está haciendo todo un manejo sostenible y obviamente también no hay que descartar el tema de responsabilidad social, que es bien importante en cada proyecto.
Nuestro cliente principal, el más grande, es Semaco.
Siempre que yo viajaba, iba a una feria, miraba productos hechos en Tailandia, en la India, muy similares a lo que yo de repente encontraba en el mercado. Y un día, hablando con alguien, le hice el comentario que me gustaría hacer una base para colocar un portapáires. Luego se nos ocurrió también hacer una mesa desayunador. O sea, con ellos empezamos con 2, 3 productos y así hemos crecido enormemente.
Para mantener un cliente como Semaco, en primer lugar, buenos diseños, la calidad de los productos, la puntualidad. Eso es fundamental.
La gestión empresarial nos ayuda bastante a nosotros para el mejoramiento de la productividad y la comercialización, la competitividad también para estar constantemente en la innovación de nuestros productos.
Sacalá cumple con toda la legalidad en todo el proceso de la adquisición de materias primas, específicamente en temas de la madera, por ejemplo.
Bueno, ellos siempre están muy orgullosos de que ellos ayudan a la reforestación.
El sistema electrónico de empresas forestales nos sirve para ver la trazabilidad de la madera, de dónde sale, de dónde nace el aprovechamiento, hacia dónde va y por dónde pasa.
Sacalá ya por varios años es inscrita en el Instituto Nacional de Bosques, en el Registro Forestal Nacional, declara toda la materia prima que utiliza a través del CEINEF.
Normalmente acá lo que se hace es comprar la madera y definitivamente tener la nota de envío, ¿verdad? Y posteriormente subirlo a la página del CEINEF para que tenga la legalidad completa, digamos, de la procedencia exacta de la madera.
Not far away, in Patsun, Chimaltenango, a group of women is making a new enterprise by sustainably harvesting pine needles and using them to manufacture novelty products.
La forma para trabajar con pino para mí es una nueva experiencia y es una ayuda para nosotros en nuestra familia, porque ese es un desarrollo económico que nos centra en nuestro hogar.
Estas empresas son generadoras de ingresos. Estos ingresos permiten dinamizar la economía local y así sostener a comunidades completas.
In this way, the people are changing their minds about forests, and they are increasingly interested in forestry as a long-term venture. Sacalá and Patsun, Chimaltenango, are not the only villages in Guatemala where things are getting better. Learning from these experiences, communities across the country and elsewhere in the tropics are starting to bring sustainability to their forests. As they do, they are also bringing hope for the future.
I never see a partnership like this. When I share with people about that story, people cannot believe it, how a private company and indigenous people can work it together.
The Yawanawa are Aveda's longest standing partnership.
They share our Aveda mission, that real connection to something bigger than just a product.
We share the common vision of protecting the nature.
And the foundation is clean water.
So by providing clean water, there's a whole ecosystem around it, a whole economic system that starts to flourish. And it's sustainable. It's not just a moment, but it really builds a community that can live on their own.
Our partnership over the years has evolved in many different ways. The world has changed quite a bit in 30 years. Aveda considers our partnership to be a cornerstone of climate resilience.
It's humanity responsibility also to care about.
We do a lot of listening and a lot of learning. And that's how we identify solutions to the common challenges that we're tackling together.
We Yawanawa cannot tell our story for our generation today without mentioning Avida.
From my side as well, you said it beautifully. You say you can't talk about the Yawanawas without mentioning Aveda. You can't talk about Aveda without mentioning the Yawanawa.
My name is E.J. Managaland. I'm Tasso Leventis Professor of Biodiversity at the University of Oxford, and I'm a principal investigator on the Trade Development and the Environment Hub project focusing on wild meat issues. The UK Government's Research and Innovation Council's Global Challenges Research Fund is funding our Trade Hub project, which is led by the UN Environment Programme's World Conservation Monitoring Centre. This 5-year project, funded until 2024, is the first research hub of its kind, bringing together 50 organisations from 15 different countries to help make trade sustainable for people and the planet. Together, these partners from industry, trade agencies, academia, governments and civil society are studying various supply chains for agricultural products and wildlife, and we're revealing potential ways to make lasting changes towards sustainability. In this presentation, we hope to give you a taste of some of our work on the wild meat trade chains in Central Africa. So why are we focusing on wild meat? We're living through an age of potentially catastrophic biodiversity decline and extinction. A major contributor to these declines is direct use of wildlife by people for income and for food. Overall, hunting is the biggest threat to biodiversity within protected areas. In some areas where hunting takes place, mammal abundances in hunted areas are over 80% lower than in unhunted areas. And this has serious knock-on effects on species diversity and on the function of ecosystems, especially large species such as elephants and gorillas who act as ecosystem engineers that disperse and grow some of the largest forest trees. Wildlife is also, however, an important resource for many rural forest communities. They use it as a regular source of food and income and as a safety net in hard times. And this is especially true in Central Africa, where wild meat can represent the main source of protein and income for many forest peoples, and where domestically grown meat is generally both unavailable and prohibitively expensive. So while wild meat use in rural areas is often for subsistence, people living in metropolitan urban areas often consume wild meat as a luxury item. So consumption rates per capita in urban areas are much lower than in rural areas. But the increasing number of people living in towns and cities in Central Africa make this consumption overall a really significant proportion of the wild meat that is consumed across Central Africa. So what can we do to make wild meat use more sustainable while still allowing those dependent upon it for their food and livelihoods to continue to use it? In 2018, the UN Convention on Biological Diversity published technical guidance for achieving a sustainable wild meat sector, and that aimed to support the 196 parties to the convention to manage their wildlife more sustainably. Our Trade Hub works in Central Africa to tackle the focal areas that the CBD highlighted as important in this guidance. So now our video will begin with efforts to reduce the urban consumption of wild meat in Kinshasa. Then we'll zoom out to the role of the international sphere in ensuring that local solutions are supported at a global level. Our first presentation comes from Dr. Robert Munyahili, who describes how Trade Hub Partners, the Wildlife Conservation Society, has been designing behavioural change interventions in Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo to reduce urban consumption of wild meat and to suggest alternatives to wild meat dishes.
And I coordinate the urban wild meat project for the Wildlife Conservation Society in the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Republic of Congo. To reduce the amount of wild meat transported to and sold in Central Africa cities, the Wildlife Conservation Society has developed from the forest to the four conceptual framework to guide the design of interventions along the wild meat supply chain, all the way from the protected areas to the end consumers in urban centers. The actors involved in this supply chain are numerous with different motivations and circumstances. Understanding these motives and the circumstances is key to designing targeted evidence-informed intervention to change the behaviors of these actors. And this necessitates overcoming key barriers to change and ensuring there is a functional regulatory framework environment, as well as promoting behavior change in a way that aligns with people's value and identities. The Wildlife Conservation Society Urban Wildlife Project focuses on 3 Central African cities: the megacity of Kinshasa, the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has an estimated population of 17 million, and the city of Brazzaville and Pointe-Noire in the Republic of Congo. Collectively, these cities are significant centers of demand for wild meat, which is transported by roads, boat, aeroplane, often over thousands of kilometers to meet the demand of an increasingly wealthy urban elite. Previous attempts to reduce urban demand have typically focused on charismatic species such as great apes, and have focused on informing members of the public about the legality of trading in and eating such species. However, this campaign relied on fear-based messaging about the illegal nature of the activity, are generally not targeted at any specific group and are misaligned with the perception and the priorities of local people. Indeed, they are often perceived as foreign and as form of conservation preaching. Initially, in the city of Pointe-Noire, and then in the much larger city of Kinshasa, the Wildlife Conservation Societies are supported and work alongside national governments and the coalition of local organizations to develop the first large-scale demand reduction campaign in Central Africa that are focused specifically on reducing the consumption of wild meat in urban areas. This campaign have used a social marketing approach that converts audience research and contextual analysis into initial campaign concept, followed by prototype and pretesting prior to campaign launch, with stakeholders engagement and monitoring and evaluation throughout. The research conducted prior to the campaign design found that across the 3 cities of Pointe-Noire, Brazzaville, and Kinshasa, wild meat is perceived as natural, organic, healthy food of local origin. It is considered to be a luxury product that functions as a status symbol. However, it is more often consumed at home with close family and friends than in restaurants. Yet, eating wild meat is not a niche activity. Indeed, 85% of Iranians eat wild meat, but to varying degrees of frequency. The 3 socio-demographic groups that consume the wild meat most frequently were selected as the target audience for the demand reduction campaign in Kinshasa. All campaign material were then tailored to appeal and resonate with the personas that were crafted to represent this group. The first segment are men over 35 with a higher level of education. These individuals want to be financially at ease and admired as being connected in the world online, while at home and in the heart they are Congolese. The second segment are men between 18 and 34 who also have a higher level of education. They want to express themselves, to succeed, and to enjoy a dynamic life, but without too much effort. The third and final segment are young women between 18 and 34 with a higher level of education. They want a contemporary, empowered life, a good marriage, and a family, and to be appreciated for what they can do and what they can offer. So after conducting a number of studies to understand the wild meat consumption behavior and lifestyles, value and identities of these target groups, three central elements were chosen as the basis of the demand reduction campaign in Kinshasa: success, social life, and Congolese cuisine. The whole campaign was designed to be positive and to reflect the vibrancy of Kinshasa. Rather than focus on preventing behavior, the campaign encouraged an alternative behavior instead, to celebrate Congolese cuisine without wild meat, with different campaign material designed for each of these consumer segments. What we have learned from the two campaigns implemented so far is that perception of wild meat and whether or not eating wild meat represents a problem is vastly different between conservationists and consumers, which highlights the need to better understand consumer perception and to design campaigns that resonate with them. Positive campaigns have been shown generally to be more effective than the use of negative messaging, and the use of positive messaging strategy has also facilitated much broader dialogue and collaboration. We have also grown to understand that we also still have a long way to go. Behavior change takes time, especially when you are trying to change a long-standing behavior with cultural association. Yet, slow and current rate of deforestation caused by wild meat trade, it is essential that we scale up and sustain the intensity of wild meat demand reduction effort across Central African cities. This will require partnership, coalition building, sustained funding, and coordinated effort over many years. But this campaign represents a step in the right direction, and we hope this can be a model for others to follow in the future.
In rural areas, many of the barriers to successful wild meat management exist due to national legislation that was originally designed for sport hunting in colonial times and doesn't reflect the realities and needs of local communities or allow for local institutions to manage their wildlife. Dr. Eric Nana from the University of Oxford outlined the work that we're doing with national governments in Central Africa to provide them with the information they need to inform their wild meat strategies and legislation.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about evidence-based approach to regulatory wildlife reforms in Central Africa. Wildlife use in Central African countries is very unsustainable currently because of two main issues: an ever-increasing urban demand and poor wildlife policies that have failed to address the root issues. Existing legislation in Central African countries are based on a past colonial system that was designed for sport hunting, and currently is very unsuited in a context where hunting is overwhelmingly for consumption rather than recreation. Africa, as we know, has the fastest growing population, and by 2050, it is projected that 1 out of 4 people on Earth will be in sub-Saharan Africa. And as this population moves more into urban areas to look for better life opportunities and continue to consume wild meat, because wild meat is part of the cultural identity for many Africans, the pressure on wild animals will even be higher, and many of these animal species are already threatened and have dwindling wild populations. The challenge here, therefore, is to develop fair policies, laws, and regulations that will allow for sustainable use of resilient wildlife species, but while also protecting the most vulnerable species in ecosystems. So, as rural communities in Central Africa transition from subsistence to market economies, and as these countries continue along the urbanization and development pathways, such fair policies are crucial for cultural integrity of the region, but as well as survival of many iconic species, such as pangolins and gorillas. So several countries in Central Africa are already considering revising their wildlife policies, among which you have countries like Gabon, Cameroon, and Democratic Republic of Congo. But the problem is policymakers in these countries that lack the necessary information to make the needed changes. And because of the lack of this information, wildlife policies at national level usually overlooked and not taken account of in national accounting. So to help these policymakers have the right information to take the right decisions, we decided to form a working group that will facilitate coherent policy reforms across Central African countries and that will ensure sustainable use of wild species. The aim of the group is to provide national policymakers with evidence base that they need to make the right decisions, but also to convene policymakers, practitioners, scientists, and other actors in the supply chain of wild meat in order to work so that they can discuss key points highlighted by experts in past 5 years that currently serve as obstacles for effective design and implementation of sustainable wildlife policies in Central Africa, but also determine key questions that are needed to answer and implement effective hunting policies and laws. They also meet to present available evidence which can answer these questions in acceptable formats for regional and national policymakers, to develop and populate indicators for tracking wildlife use and policy impact over time. And one important thing to take note of is that this working group is led by Central African scientists, lawyers, and practitioners to ensure the relevance of these policies to the realities on the ground. Thank you for giving me your attention.
Jaya Kalakal from the UN Environment Programme then presents her work identifying the current international and national trade barriers that are limiting national production of domestic meat alternatives in Central Africa, and she highlights policy pathways for boosting national domestic meat production that her work has identified.
We have seen from the two previous interventions that the rapidly growing urban demand for wild meat is becoming unsustainable for wildlife resources. Facilitating the availability of affordable, fresh, and nutritious alternative proteins is among the many proposed solutions to reduce unsustainable wild meat dependence in Central Africa. The availability of alternative meats such as chicken, beef, pork, etc. is determined by a variety of macroeconomic policies of not just the countries in question, but even countries lying thousands of kilometers apart. This dynamic is enabled by international trade and trade-related policies. We did an analysis of historical trends in meat consumption and production in 4 Congo Basin countries, Republic of the Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, Gabon, and Cameroon. We found that local production has not kept up with the growing demand for meat, and the gap is increasingly filled by imports, often in frozen form, from the EU, US, and Brazil. As you can see here, EU takes a big share of this. Now, meat imports is not inherently a bad thing. In fact, it has become a crucial aspect of ensuring food security for the urban populations in importing countries due to their highly competitive prices. However, the prices are so low that it is pushing local producers out of business. This is undermining several attempts at boosting local production to support livelihoods and food security when global supply chains may be disrupted. Moreover, the extremely low prices do not actually reflect the high environmental, social, and health costs that are associated with the intensive production methods used in the global north. There are many macroeconomic factors at play here. The influence of domestic agricultural policies, historical trade distorting subsidies, support from financial and credit institutions, industrial policies, and favorable trade agreements are all factors that have come together to build the competitiveness that the exporting countries have today. In the interest of time, I want to take one example of the EU, which is among the top exporters of meat to the 4 countries in question, but also globally. Historically, the Common Agricultural Policy of the EU, or CAP, has provided support in the form of subsidies for the crops that were considered important for the European food security. The economic environment provided by the security of commodity prices offered by the EU CAP also stimulated scientific research and development, increasing crop and animal yields through intensive methods, which are now a major contributor to several environmental crises globally. These long-term policies have a strong contribution to the EU's competitive meat exports today, and in turn on displacing local production in developing countries through trade and price effects. These effects cannot be corrected quickly because agricultural productivity depends on long-standing favorable framework conditions and long-term investments in innovation. Similarly, the US and Brazil put in place their own long-term strategies which have similar effects. So on the one side, some countries implemented long-term structural policies to increase their export competitiveness, and on the other side, Central African countries began to liberalize their economies around the 1990s as part of financial stabilization and structural adjustment programs, and reinforced by their joining the WTO. The Congo Basin countries looked to raise export revenues from oil and extractive industries, so the non-cash crop agricultural sector took a backseat. As part of their commitment to common external tariff zones and structural readjustment programs, members reduced tariff and non-tariff barriers significantly. When these came into force in 1998, imports rose dramatically. So today's situation results from a combination of several factors. First, agricultural policy in the Congo Basin countries has not focused on the competitive advantages of local farmers, but has rather pursued the goal of providing sufficient food for urban populations through imports. Existing structural problems, including poor rural, peri-urban, and urban infrastructure, underinvestment in food production and processing, as well as limited functioning of markets and supply, may be linked to subsidized imports, but also to the lack of long-term national planning to support the development of the agriculture sector. This, in addition to factors such as conflict, corruption, and political instability, has resulted in the situation today. The mounting pressure on wild meats is as much a sustainable food systems issue as it is a conservation issue. Macroeconomic factors may have more influence than one gives credit for. Central African economies have several upcoming opportunities to use trade and trade-related policies to support sustainable food systems domestically while reducing pressure on wild meats. This includes reaping the benefits of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement for agricultural development and intra-African trade, calling upon trade partners to reform environmentally and socially harmful trade-distorting agriculture and fish subsidies, and developing coherent domestic strategies aligning trade and agriculture sectors. Carefully planned, context-adapted interventions at the macro level will go a long way in transitioning to sustainable production and consumption systems globally. Thank you.
And finally, Dr. Robert Nassi, Director General of CIFOR-ICRAF, outlines the need for monitoring and evaluation systems at all stages of the wild meat chain, from local to international, that will ensure that our policies and interventions are evidence-based. He also introduces the work that the Trade Hub has been doing to develop indicators of wild meat sustainability that will allow progress to be tracked at all scales, including international targets.
Okay, greetings everyone. I mean, we have seen that the issue of wildlife for food, and especially animal, is a big problem. And billions of animals are killed every year. It impacts, and it's a source of protein for millions of people. And it's clearly unsustainable. It's unsustainable on an ecological, economical, and livelihood level. So we do have a problem. And when you have a problem, you need to see how you can fix it, how you can intervene to fix it. And intervention should be at the local level, at the national level, at the international level. But when you do something, I mean, if you want to see the result of what you have done, and you want to assess, you need some indicators. And this is where we are going to talk about. I mean, what sort of indicator we can use to measure of intervention in terms of making the wild meat sector more sustainable, more equitable, and better for conservation issues. And at the project level, I mean, people have a need to monitor their intervention. Okay? If you decide to do something on the wild meat sector in one place, you need to be able to measure the result of what you have done and see if you are going in the right or in the wrong direction. And, and for that, the Wild Meat project has developed a database of indicator, the wild meat indicator, that can be used by project manager, by game manager, by protected area manager in terms of assessing the trends that the sector is following intervention or no intervention. And this is important to have a database because you don't necessarily need the same indicator wherever you are. So some people may choose a subset of indicator, other people may choose another subset. Ultimately, what you will get is a trend showing you that you are going in the right direction or not, or you are not moving. So that's at the, I can say, the local level. Then at the national level, it's a bit of a different issue. Sort of the wild meat sector is very important economically speaking. We have shown that in some countries, I mean, the size of this informal economy is the size of the formal agricultural sector. But in most cases, it's not very much evident, obvious at the national level. So you have to create an awareness because you only manage, you only consider what is important in your global statistics. And that's why you need to develop indicators at the national level also. Because if it's not in the economic indicator of a country, very often it's ignored. And we know that it is important for the reason that we have stated before. So we are also working with a SNAP project and the government of Gabon and the Democratic Republic of Congo to develop these national level indicators in order to monitor the overall value and the overall impact and the overall importance of the wild meat sector at the national level and to develop the relevant policy to make this sector more conservation friendly, more sustainable, and with an equitable sharing of the benefits of this sector. Which brings us to the international level. And conservation, sustainable use, and equitable benefit sharing, it's the motto of the Convention of Biological Diversity. And we have worked with the Convention of Biological Diversity for a long time on this whole issue of sustainable use. And in 2019, we developed some guidelines on a more inclusive and participatory sustainable wild meat sector for the parties. And now the CBD is about to adopt a global biodiversity framework, which we call the post-2020 agenda. And for this global biodiversity framework, there are some targets. And for these targets, to see if you are reaching these targets, you will need indicators also. And two of the targets, at least two of the targets, one is about sustainable harvest, and the other one is about benefit sharing, equitable benefit of this harvest. We consider wild meat are very important for wildlife species, wild meat and others. And for these also, we also need indicators, and they are likely different than the one that we develop at the local level or at the national level. And so we are also working with the CBD and a group of people in terms of developing this indicator at the international level. So this whole picture, I mean, having an indicator toolkit at the local level, indicator of importance at the national level, and use an indicator at the global level will give us an overall picture of our intervention and whether we are going in the right or wrong direction for the wild meat sector. And this is the work of a series of interrelated synergistic projects. I mean, one is the Trade Hub funded by the United Kingdom Research Innovation. The other one is the Wild Meat Project funded by the USAID and the US Fish and Wildlife Services. And the third one is the Sustainable Wildlife Management Program funded by the European Commission and the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. And with all that, we hope that we'll be able to have an inclusive, sustainable, and just wild meat sector in the years to come. Thank you.
I'm delighted for the opportunity to contribute to this year's UNDP Nature for Life Hub. As Director for Trade and Environment at the World Trade Organization, I would like to offer you a few perspectives on how trade and trade cooperation can help preserve and bring out the value of nature. The vision of how trade and the WTO can contribute to protecting the environment has seen major progress in the last decade. We have seen a paradigm shift away from the view that protecting the environment is a cost that can hinder economic development, instead to a more positive one of how the WTO and trade can be part of the solution to both environmental and economic challenges. By connecting people and markets, trade has the potential to propel economic transformation towards environmental sustainability. It can do so by promoting sustainable agricultural practices, circular economy models, green infrastructure projects, resource-smart food systems, and land restoration, and many more. By doing so, we can reduce demands on our ecosystems. Let me offer just a few pathways through which trade can help our economies and societies to become greener, cleaner, more prosperous, and more inclusive. To begin with, at our ministerial conference this year, members concluded the WTO Fisheries Agreement, the first WTO agreement with sustainability at its core. This marks a major step forward for ocean sustainability. The agreement prohibits harmful fishery subsidies, which are a key factor in the widespread depletion of the world's fish stocks. Secondly, this year, our flagship World Trade Report for 2022 focuses on trade and climate change. And in the report, we analyze and demonstrate how trade can spur innovation in green climate technologies, amongst other things. Open trade, for example, has driven down the price of solar power by almost 90% in the last decade, while helping boost efficiency by double since 1980. Trade can similarly propel a shift towards nature-based solutions, and this will not only lower carbon emissions, but also help developing countries jump steps in the development process, offering paths for sustainable growth. Biodiversity conservation can also be promoted through legal and well-regulated trade in sustainable plant and animal products. Such trade has helped animals such as the vicunias recover from near extinction. By requiring a mark of origin throughout the value chain, this has helped improve sustainability and traceability of vicuña fiber. Finally, we need to help developing countries to produce and trade more sustainably. The WTO Aid for Trade program can help lift farmers out of poverty, and by doing so, also contribute to reforestation and more sustainable forest and land management. WTO members regularly exchange experiences at our Trade and Environment Committee on illegal logging, trade of illegally harvested timber, and sustainable forest management. These exchanges and discussions can in turn facilitate understanding that may result in other countries adopting similar projects. And before I conclude, let me highlight that WTO members are already paving the way forward. 3 new environmental initiatives have been launched in December 2021. They exemplify the recognition that trade and trade policy have a role to play in addressing environmental issues, whether on issues such as plastics, on the need to phase out inefficient fossil fuels, or more broadly to advance the agenda of trade and sustainability. Therefore, the message I would like to leave you today is that international trade cooperation is essential to achieving our collective commitments to protect the environment, mitigate climate change, and prevent biodiversity loss and deforestation. As the economy recovers from COVID-19, we have an opportunity to build back better and greener. Our mission is to work together to help trade deliver results for people and the planet. Thank you for your attention.
Well, that's it for today's theme on financing nature. Thank you so much for joining us, and be sure to check out all the different offerings in this year's Nature for Life Hub platform, including our Action Center. And please join us tomorrow for the theme of creating a planetary safety net. Thank you again, and farewell.